Professor of Pharmacy at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, Whose Uneasiness? At noon, another owl flew into Hogwarts with news of Mundungus. Come to London quickly. There were only a few words on the note, and underneath was a line of address. The handwriting was very sloppy, and the exclamation mark at the end even punctured the paper. After Alexis received Mundungus' letter, he immediately walked into Professor McGonagall's office. 2 minutes later, there were faint sounds of quarreling inside, and then Alexis stormed out of the door angrily, with a slamming sound coming from the office behind him. The students in the corridor stopped and watched Alexis walking towards Professor Flitwick's office with a gloomy expression. A few more minutes passed, and Alexis left Professor Flitwick's office. His expression became even more gloomy. Through the office door, that had not been closed in time, the students could vaguely see inside. Flitwick was standing on a chair and looking towards him. Alexis shouted something. Alexis didn't reply, and he walked towards Miss Sprout's office again. This time, Alexis stayed longer, about half an hour. However, he still left gloomily. Now the students exploded. They leaned against the corridor wall and watched Alexis walking towards the potions office. Wherever Alexis went, the students moved out of the way, not daring to make a sound. They saw Alexis standing at the door of Snape's office for a minute before walking inside. I bet it won't take Mr. Alexis 5 minutes to get out, a Ravenclaw student whispered to the students next to him. Before the classmates around him could speak, Alexis's roar came from the potions office with the door ajar. Severus, don't push yourself too far. Then, there was a fierce quarrel between two people inside. Go to hell, Snape. Alexis blushed, shouted, and angrily left the potions office. The students looked at each other in blank dismay. Alexis left the main building of Hogwarts angrily and walked to Hagrid's hut on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. The students lay on the windows and looked at the lonely Hagrid's hut quietly. After a long time, Hagrid and Alexis walked out of the hut together. Hagrid patted Alexis on the shoulder with his palm as big as a cat-tail leaf, as if to tell him something. Alexis waved to Hagrid, showing a reluctant expression. Smile point, then left school. What happened? Why did Mr. Alexis have an argument with every professor? Alexis left the school. Before leaving, he found several professors, but none were satisfactory. Finally, he seemed to get help from Hagrid. Judging from the forced smile on Alexis's face before leaving, it seemed that the help Hagrid could provide was limited. This incident spread among the teachers and students of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry at the speed of light. In the Defense Against the Dark Arts office, Quirrell watched Alexis leave the school and slowly looked away. His fists were clenched tightly and seemed to be shaking slightly with excitement. His face turned red. Dear Master, Alexis has left, and we can begin our operations. After speaking, he picked up the quill pen on the table, spread his hand, and the quill pen fell lightly on the letter paper, automatically writing a series of beautiful words. Dear Master, just in case, your humble servants will ask Alexis what he told them before leaving. At dinner time, the little wizards gathered in the dining room, and the Gryffindor students stared at the Slytherin table while grabbing bread. The Slytherins were ladling soup and grinning provocatively at the Gryffindors. Because of the lessons learned in the morning, the deans of each college decided to have dinner with the students in the dining hall and supervise them until the end, to prevent the students from fighting. At this time, almost all the teachers at Hogwarts were in the dining hall, which gave the little wizards no chance to do anything. May Professor McGonagall. Yeah, why didn't Alexis come? Quirrell asked stammeringly. Ever since he found his scarf in the secret room that day, he had been wrapping it around his head. Alexis wants to leave the school and he's going to see Headmaster Dumbledore. When Alexis was mentioned, Professor McGonagall's face was still ugly, and it was obvious that she had not yet recovered from Alexis' rude yelling. Quirrell nodded, his lips moving, as if he had some regrets. He's just a spoiled kid, huh? Snape, who was sitting on Quirrell's right, covered the bruises on his face and mocked. Quirrell screamed in horror when he saw the scars on Snape's face. Ah. Sissy Severus, you're okay, right? Snape touched the scar on his face, and the muscles on his face twitched. He shook his head, put down his knife and fork, and returned to his you all owe me money state. Quirrell pursed his lips, shrinking his neck, and not daring to speak anymore. Throughout dinner time, the atmosphere in the restaurant was weird and depressing, which made many little wizards feel very uncomfortable. During the after-dinner activity time, the three Harrys were walking to the Gryffindor common room. They were worried about Alexis' situation. They had all heard what happened to Alexis today, and they even saw Alexis covering one side of her face at the door when she walked out of the main building. Considering the bruises on Snape's face, Mr. Alexis didn't get any benefits either. You shut up. The three of them were discussing in low voices whether they should ask Hagrid what happened when a sudden shout in the corridor stopped them in their tracks. In the entire corridor, the eyes of all the little wizards were focused together. The one who shouted was a shy tall boy with the Hufflepuff house emblem embroidered on his chest. He is Hufflepuff's prefect, Gabrielle Truman, Ron whispered. Opposite Gabrielle was a girl with long platinum blonde hair, with the Slytherin house emblem embroidered on her chest. Behind her were several lower grade Slytherin students. Gabrielle, I don't think Hogwarts prohibits students from free speech. Is that correct? Gemma Farley asked with her head held high and a standardized smile on her face. They're just talking about a possibility, which doesn't mean anything. If that's not the case, it doesn't do Mr. Alexis the slightest harm by what they're talking about. If the facts are indeed true, what they said is the truth. There is nothing in the Hogwarts school rules that prohibits students from discussing the facts. Gabrielle blushed and gasped, her whole body shaking with anger. He subconsciously glanced behind the onlookers, then withdrew his gaze, and looked directly at Gemma Farley. They must apologize to Mr. Alexis, Gabrielle said. Gemma Farley stared at Gabrielle with raised eyebrows, not giving an inch. Mr. Alexis is not at the school. I'm afraid even if they wanted to apologize to Mr. Alexis, they wouldn't be able to find anyone. I heard he went to London. What are you doing? Just when the two sides were in a stalemate and Gabrielle was about to take action, Snape appeared. Snape's appearance promptly stopped a conflict between two house prefects. He separated Gabrielle and Gemma Farley and forcefully drove the watching young wizards back to the lounges of their respective houses. Today's curfew has been brought forward. Chapter 102. Everyone is taking action. Gryffindor Lounge. Harry and the three came together. We have no idea what's going on, and even if we wanted to help, we wouldn't be able to do anything. They were discussing how to help Alexis. The slander of Principal Dumbledore in the newspapers should be the root cause. Hermione pointed to the newspaper in her hand, which she had picked up from the restaurant. Mr. Alexis respects Principal Dumbledore very much. He must have asked other professors for help. Ron felt that what Hermione said made sense, and nodded while looking at Harry. I want to know what is hidden in that secret room. Harry said suddenly. The first time we went there, Mr. Alexis came out of the secret room. The second time we went, Professor Quirrell and Professor Flitwick were both preparing to go in. And since we were first discovered by Mr. Alexis inside, the defense there has been strengthened. It has become professors taking turns to guard the place. Are they guarding against Mr. Alexis, or are they guarding against the students? If it is to protect students, there is no need to keep people on duty after the curfew, because students are not allowed to leave the lounge after the curfew. Ron and Hermione looked at each other and whispered, "Are you saying that Mr. Alexis told the professors about his discovery of us?" As soon as she finished speaking, Hermione shook her head and denied her point of view. No, if Mr. Alexis had told the truth, you should have been fined for copying the school rules before entering the secret room for the second time. But if Mr. Alexis didn't tell anyone, why has the defense of the secret room been strengthened since then? Ron asked, confused. Unless it's not us they are guarding against, Harry said. That means that that night, in addition to the three of us and Mr. Alexis, there was a fifth person. They found the fifth man, but couldn't catch him, so the professors stepped up their defense. It's Professor Quirrell. Ron asked in disbelief. Harry, when we were captured that day, there were only four of us, Quirrell, and Professor Flitwick inside. Professor Flitwick was on duty that day. Only Professor Quirrell shouldn't be there. Professor Quirrell deceived Professor Flitwick that day, and when he found us, he was about to attack Professor Flitwick. Ron recalled that, when they were captured, Quirrell was hiding behind Flitwick, and he still had the wand in his hand, which was pointed at Flitwick. Originally, he thought it was Quirrell and Flitwick's defensive action, after discovering someone entering the secret room. Now that he thought about it, it should be Quirrell's intention to attack Professor Flitwick. Especially since Quirrell appeared in the corridor on the 4th floor twice. Quirrell shouldn't have appeared there at all at that time. Today is Professor Quirrell's day of duty, Hermione reminded. The expressions of the three people changed, and they could no longer sit still. I think I know what it is. Harry clapped his hands excitedly, and cheered in a low voice with suppressed voice. When we were in Diagon Alley, Mr. Alexis and I went to Gringotts to get something. It was a thing that was packed into a small rag bag. I asked Mr. Alexis what it was, and he secretly told me that it was a magic stone. What stone? Ron asked. The Philosopher's Stone. Mr. Alexis said it was called the Philosopher's Stone. Harry repeated. What's that for? Why did Quirrell steal it? The three little guys looked at each other. They couldn't answer this question. Even Harry only knew it was called the Sorcerer's Stone. They didn't even know what the Sorcerer's Stone did. Hermione suddenly jumped up. Wait, she said, and then ran back to the girls' dormitory. Soon, she came back holding a thick and big old book. I borrowed this from the library a few weeks ago and wanted to read it for fun. For fun, said Ron, but Hermione told him to be quiet and to look for something. She began to turn the pages of the book quickly, mumbling something. Finally, she found the I know it. I know it. Can we talk now? Ron said angrily. Hermione ignored him. Nicholas Flamel, she said in a theatrical whisper, is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone. Seeing Harry and Ron's confused expressions, Hermione pushed the book over. Ancient alchemy involved the refining of the Philosopher's Stone, a miraculous substance with astonishing properties. The Philosopher's Stone can turn any metal into pure gold, and it can also create an elixir of life that will make those who drink it forever immortal. Over the centuries, there have been many reports about the Philosopher's Stone, but the only remaining Philosopher's Stone belongs to the famous alchemist and opera lover Mr. Nico Flamel. He celebrated his 665th birthday last year, and now lives in seclusion in Devon with his wife Perinal, 658 years old. That's a stone that can make you immortal and turn gold into something. That's what Quirrell must be thinking. That big dog must be guarding Flamel's Philosopher's Stone. I dare say that Flamel asked Dumbledore to keep it for him because they were friends and he knew that someone was trying to take advantage of the Philosopher's Stone. That's why he took it. The Philosopher's Stone was transferred from Gringotts. We must rush to the secret room on the 4th floor. Harry glanced around the common room warily and said in a low voice, the professors don't know yet that Professor Quirrell is the person they are looking for. Mr. Alexis, who has always been wary of Professor Quirrell, is not in school. Mr. Dumbledore is in trouble at this time. We must rush over. Ron nodded fiercely, with eager anticipation and excitement in his eyes. Hermione on the other side was hesitant. Let's go find Professor McGonagall. As soon as Hermione proposed a solution, Harry rejected it. The professors won't believe it, and now they don't know that we have sneaked in twice. If the professors know that we have sneaked in twice. Hermione flicked her wrist subconsciously. They were really tired from copying the school rules these days. I'll go back and get the invisibility cloak. When the curfew starts, we'll rush there immediately. Remember to bring your wand. Harry warned quietly. After the three little guys discussed their actions, they immediately got up and dispersed. At night, the noisy corridors of Hogwarts quiet down. Under the supervision of the prefects of each college, the little wizards returned to their dormitories and went to bed early. In the empty corridor, Quirrell, wearing a purple scarf, came to the door of the secret room on the 4th floor like a thief. Chapter 103, Breakthrough. Louis had just finished dinner and was lying at the door. When he saw Quirrell coming, he called at him twice, shook his three heads, and got ready to sleep. Since professors were on duty, its life has become much easier. Most of the night was spent sleeping. Quirrell did not enter the secret room immediately. He first sat on a chair, took out the 5th volume of magic, potions, and botany and read it with interest. Unknowingly, it was already late at night. A tabby cat with lace around its eyes jumped lightly from the stairs and disappeared at the end of the corridor. Quirrell slowly put down his book, stood up and came to Llewellyn. He gently patted Llewellyn to wake him up. I'm going to go in and check. Llewellyn was sleeping soundly when he was suddenly woken up. He whimpered twice in dissatisfaction and moved his tall body to get out of the way. This was Quirrell's habit. Whenever it was Quirrell's turn to be on duty, he would dutifully go in and check on it from time to time. Llewellyn didn't notice anything unusual. Quirrell walked into the secret room with a strange expression, like a performance artist suffering from epilepsy. The Devil's Net, Key House and Wizard's Chess. These are too simple for Quirrell plus Voldemort. Just like what Zixis said, this is more like a child's brain teaser. He landed lightly on the Devil above the net, and then arrived in front of the key house before the Devil's Net could react. Facing a house full of keys, if you were a little wizard like Harry, you might need to observe for a while, and then ride a broomstick to chase back and forth among the energetic birds, exhausting yourself in the end. You may be lucky enough to catch the key. Quirrell just stood at the door, squinting at the bright birds all over the room, and finally focused on a big bird with sky blue wings, with a big key hanging on the bird's wings. All fly. Quirrell pulled out his wand and cast the key directly into his hand with a summoning spell. Quirrell grabbed the bird, grinned happily, and roughly inserted the key on the bird's wing into the keyhole. The door slammed open, throwing the bird back into the house. Quirrell's face twitched, and he continued walking deeper. Use fire. Oh my god. They're afraid of fire. The three little guys wore invisibility cloaks, screamed in low voices, and hurriedly managed to pass the test of the Devil's Net. Harry put away his invisibility cloak, drew out his wands with his two other friends, and walked forward cautiously. Soon, they also reached the second level. Look for the key. Find the key quickly. Quirrell has already gone in. We must move quickly. Hurry up. Iron Triangle chirped, and soon found the crooked key flying low in the sky. There. Harry shouted, pointing to the bird with sky blue wings. This is more exciting than when he found the golden snitch on the court. How are we going to catch it? There. Harry looked around every corner of the room. There are broomsticks there. They have been to this room twice and this is the third time. Hermione and Ron rushed over and grabbed a broom each. They kicked off and flew into the air. On your left. Further left. Hurry up. Harry stood on the ground and acted as conductor. Ron followed Harry's command and flew sharply to the left, only to hit the ceiling head first. No. Hermione, it's your left. Come on. It's gone to the right. The bird seemed to know that Hermione was here to catch it. Even though it had just been caught once by Quirrell, it still flew crookedly and tried hard to avoid being caught a second time. Quick, on the right. It flew over, in front. Turn around, turn around. Oh no. Harry covered his eyes and did not dare to look. In the air, under Harry's command, Ron chased the bird around the house several times. In the end, the bird led Ron to fly to a corner and then made a flexible turn, causing Ron to hit him head on the wall. I caught it. The bird threw Ron away, but unexpectedly ran into Hermione's arms and was caught by Hermione. Quick. Ron held his nose, ignoring his injuries, and quickly urged, Quirrell is going far. He has already surpassed us. When they arrived on the 4th floor, they caught up with Quirrell coming in. Llewellyn moved his body to block the gap. They didn't know how long Quirrell had been in. Harry ran towards the door, the key still struggling in his hand. He inserted it into the keyhole and twisted it hard. Yes, that was it. There was a click, and as soon as the door lock popped open, the key flew away again. It was caught twice in a row and looked haggard. Are you ready? Harry asked Ron and Hermione, holding the door handle with his hand. They both nodded. So, he pushed the door open. The second room was pitch black and nothing could be seen. But as soon as they stepped in, the house was suddenly brightly lit, illuminating a shocking scene. They stood on the edge of a huge chessboard. In front of them were black chess pieces, which were taller than them, and seemed to be carved out of black stone or something. At the other end of the room, facing them, were some white chess pieces. Harry, Ron and Hermione shuddered slightly. The faces of the towering white chess pieces had no facial features. What now? Harry asked quietly. They were all shocked by the sight of the entire room in front of them. Obviously, said Ron, we have to play chess to get across this room. In my opinion, said Ron, we have to act as pawns. He walked over to a black knight and touched the knight's horse point immediately. The stone came to life, the horse hoofed the ground, and the knight turned his helmeted head to look at Ron. Do we, have to go with you? The black knight nodded. We need to think about it carefully. Ron turned to Harry and Hermione. I'm afraid we have to replace the 3 chess pieces here. Harry and Hermione didn't speak, and they didn't even recognize the chess pieces here. Among the 3 people, only Ron has played this before, and it is said that he is also a master. Whether they are masters or not, they will soon know the answer. That's right. Don't be angry, Ron said. Among the 3 of us, I'm afraid I'm the only one who can do it. We are not angry, Hermione said to Harry. Tell us what to do. Quirrell is already far ahead of us. Maybe he's almost at the final hurdle. Okay, Harry, you take the bishop's place. Hermione, you stand next to him and take the castle's place. How about you? I'll be a knight, said Ron. The chess pieces seemed to be listening to them. As soon as he finished speaking, a knight, a bishop and a castle turned around, turned their backs to the white chess pieces, and walked out of the chessboard, leaving 3 empty seats for Harry, Ron and Hermione. Chapter 104, Ron's Courage. The rule in chess is that white goes first, said Ron, looking across the board. As soon as he finished speaking, a white pawn moved forward 2 spaces. Ron began to direct the black chess to fight point. Harry and Hermione silently followed his instructions. Harry's knees began to shake slightly. What if we lose? What happens if you lose? Or what happens to the captured pieces? Can Ron do it? Harry was suddenly frightened. Harry, move 4 spaces to the right. Ron's voice interrupted his thoughts. Soon, Harry's questions were answered. The White Queen viciously knocks one of the knights to the floor and drags him off the chessboard point. He lay there face down, motionless. Harry turned pale with fear and looked up at Ron. Ron was obviously not as calm as he appeared. His forehead was covered with sweat. He tugged on the collar of his robe as if he wanted to take a breath, and it seemed that it was very hot here. I have no choice but to do this, Ron said calmly, so that you can eat the bishop. Hermione, go ahead. Hermione and Harry didn't dare to make a sound. They didn't dare to disrupt Ron's thoughts. They were afraid that the slightest sound would affect Ron and cause them to lose and then be crushed to the ground and dragged out of the chessboard. Ron also acted more cautiously. This was different from the wizard chess he had played before. There were 2 of his good friends on the chessboard. If he was careless, his 2 good friends would be eaten. Look at those captured chess pieces. Ron didn't think Harry and Hermione could resist being crushed by such a big wife. And because there are captured chess pieces for proofing, many sacrifice and pair tactics cannot be used at all. This caused Ron a lot of trouble. Every time one of their pieces is captured, the white pieces act ruthlessly and show no mercy. Soon, a large number of lifeless black chess pieces were scattered across the wall. On 2 occasions, thanks to Ron's timely discovery of Harry and Hermione's critical situation, he found a way to save them. Ron charged across the board himself, taking almost as many white pieces as they lost black pieces. It's almost there, he whispered suddenly. Let me think. The White Queen turned her featureless face toward him. Yes, Ron whispered, this is the only way. I have to be eaten. No, Harry and Hermione yelled at the same time. This is chess, Ron snapped. Some sacrifices always have to be made. I take 1 step forward and she'll eat me and you'll checkmate the king, Harry. But, do you want to stop Quirrell? Ron's expression suddenly changed. He blushed and yelled at Harry. Sweat dripped down his cheeks and gathered into a small puddle. Flow onto the board. Ron, hurry up. If you don't hurry up, he will already have the magic stone. Harry didn't hesitate any longer. Are you ready? Ron shouted, his face pale, but his expression very determined. I'm going. Pay attention. Act immediately after winning. Don't delay here. He took a step forward, and the White Queen immediately pounced on him. She raised her stone arm and punched Ron hard on the head, causing him to fall to the floor. Hermione screamed, shouting Ron's name, hoping to see him stand up. But the reality was not what she expected. Hermione wanted to run over and see Ron, but just as she was about to take a step, she remembered Ron's instructions and could only pull her legs back. The White Queen dragged Ron aside. It looked like Ron was knocked unconscious. Trembling, Harry moved 3 spaces to the left. The White King took off the crown from his head and threw it at Harry's feet. They won. The white pieces bowed and stepped back, making way for them to move toward the door smoothly. Harry and Hermione gave Ron one last sad look back before rushing through the door and down the next corridor. He'll be fine, Harry said, trying to convince himself of it. What do you think will come next? We've passed Sprout's trap, the Devil's Net. It must have been Flitwick who enchanted those keys. Professor McGonagall deformed the pieces and brought them to life, and that's what's left Quirrell's magic and Snape's. They came to another door. Okay, Harry asked quietly. Go in. Harry pushed the door open. A disgusting stench hit their nostrils, and they had to lift their clothes to cover their noses. Their eyes were also filled with tears. Through their blurred, tearful eyes, they saw a giant monster. However, the giant monster lay motionless on the floor in front of him, unconscious, with a large bloody lump on its head. Great, let's go quickly. Harry breathed a sigh of relief and pulled Hermione towards the door. He opened the next door. For a moment, the two of them couldn't bear to see what was waiting for them next. However, there was nothing scary here. There was only one table in the room, with 7 bottles of different shapes arranged on it. The third bottle from the left was much smaller than the others, while the 6th bottle was larger than the others. Snape's magic, said Harry. What should we do? As soon as the two of them crossed the threshold, a flame rose up behind them and sealed the doorway. The flame was unusual in that it was purple. At the same time, black flames burst out from the door leading to the front. They are stuck in the middle. Look. Hermione grabbed a roll of parchment lying next to the bottle. Harry stood behind her and read with her. Danger is ahead. Safety is behind. There are 2 of us who can help you. Drink them down. One leads you onward. The other sends you back to where you came from. 2 contain nettle wine. 3 are killers, waiting in line. Choose, unless you wish to procrastinate here forever. We also provide 4 clues to help you choose. First, no matter how cunningly the poison hides, in fact, they all stand on the left of the nettle wine. Second, the contents of the bottles at the left and right ends are different. None of them will work for you if you want to move forward. Third, you'll notice that the bottles come in all sizes. There is no death hidden in giants and dwarfs. Fourth, second from the left and second from the right. Although they look different, the taste is the same. That's great. Hermione breathed a sigh of relief. It's not magic, it's a reasoning question. I think we have hope. Can you figure it out? Harry asked. Give me a minute, Hermione said, picking up the parchment and starting to walk around the table. Chapter 105. In front of the mirror verized. There are 2 bottles of antidote here. One can go forward and one can go back. Hermione explained based on what was written on the parchment. 2 bottles contain nettle wine and 3 bottles contain poison. We just need to find 2 bottles of the antidote. Which bottles? Harry asked. Second, the contents of the bottles at the left and right ends are different. If you want to move forward, neither of them will be of use to you. That is to say, the 1st and 7th bottles are either potions that have been withdrawn, or they are poison or nettle wine. Thirdly, you will find that the bottles are of different sizes. Death is not hidden among giants and dwarfs. This shows that the 3rd and 6th bottles are not poison. Fourth, the 2nd on the left and the 2nd on the right, although they look different, they taste the same. This means that the 2nd and 6th bottles are either filled with poison or nettle wine at the same time, because the antidote used for forward and backward cannot be of the same flavor. The 3rd bottle and the 6th bottle are not poison, so the 2nd bottle is not poison either. Hermione's fingers brushed over the 2nd bottle, the 3rd bottle, and the 6th bottle in turn, moving them out a little. There are 3 bottles of poison in the remaining 1st bottle, 4th bottle, 5th bottle, and 7th bottle. Hermione pointed to the 4 bottles that stayed in place and read again. First, no matter how cunningly poisons hide, they are actually on the left side of nettle wine. In other words, the poisons are all on the left side of the nettle wine, and the 7th bottle cannot be poison. She moved the 1st, 4th, and 5th bottles aside. These 3 are poison. Harry didn't dare to speak, although he wanted to remind Hermione not to do this, which would mess up the order of the bottles, and if they couldn't figure it out, they wouldn't even be able to return them to their original positions. And the 2nd and 6th flavors are the same. So, they're both metal wine. Hermione removed the second and 6 large bottles and set them aside. According to Hermione's explanation, all that's left now are the 3rd and 7th bottles. One of them is a potion for moving forward, and the other is a potion for retreating. It says this. Hermione pointed at the parchment and said, the 1st and 7th bottles are useless for progress. So, this bottle is a potion for retreat. Hermione picked up the 7th bottle, then pointed to the 3rd, smallest bottle. This is a potion for moving forward. A flash of amazement flashed in Harry's eyes. If it weren't for the occasion, he would have applauded Hermione. But there's not enough room for 2 people. Hermione frowned and stared at the vial. This can allow people to go back through the purple flames, right? Harry asked, picking up the 7th bottle. Hermione nodded. You drink this bottle. Harry handed Hermione the potion for recovery, took the small bottle, and when Hermione was about to speak, he said, Hermione, don't interrupt yet. Listen to me, you go back and take on to the owlery, write a letter to Mr. Alexis, and tell him everything. He'll be here to help. But, before Hermione could finish speaking, Harry raised his head and drank the small bottle in one gulp. He shook the small bottle with the mouth downwards, but he didn't see a drop of liquid dripping for a long time. It's not enough for one bite. Harry smiled at Hermione, then waved at Hermione and walked forward. She mustered up her courage and walked into the black flames. The moment the flames wrapped around his body, he felt cold all over his body without any burning sensation. Hermione's shout behind him seemed to disappear, and everything around him became quiet. At that moment, he could see nothing, only black flames in front of him. Then, he successfully came to the other side and entered the last room, the shrieking shack on the hillside outside Hogsmeade. Alexis labored on the grassy slope and counted the stars. It was already the end of September, and the grass and trees had turned yellow, and the entire hillside was in a state of decay, which made the romantic thing of counting stars boring. Oh, it's Alexis counting stars. He doesn't deserve romance, or he doesn't understand what romance means. Taking out his pocket watch to check the time, Alexis stuffed the watch back into his pocket, stood up, brushed off the blades of grass on his body, and walked into the shrieking shack muttering. He didn't see that not long after he walked into the shrieking shack, a skinny black dog ran down the mountain. Alexis returned to the Hogwarts campus along the secret passage, quietly dodged Filch and his Mrs. Norris, and reached the 4th floor. Llewellyn was sleeping soundly, and his 3 pairs of ears seemed to be aware of Alexis' approach, and started to move slightly. Alexis took out the flute she got from Hagrid, and started playing it awkwardly. Llewellyn, who was about to wake up, immediately fell into a deep sleep again. After crossing Llewellyn, jumping down the passage, and bypassing the devil's net, Alexis stood in the key room, staring at the 2 brooms in the center of the room. Someone came. Alexis pulled out her wand, looked around alertly, then waved the wand and disappeared. In the last room, Quirrell was standing in front of the mirror of Verized with his back turned. In front of him, Harry nervously grasped the wand, his joints turning slightly white. You could tell he was nervous. Quirrell waved his wand easily, and several ropes appeared out of thin air, tying up the nervous Harry. This cross-level battle is over before it even begins. It's really you. Harry struggled and shouted to Quirrell. Weren't you always suspicious of Snape and Alexis? Quirrell walked up to Harry lightly and leaned over to look at Harry. By this time, his stuttering had completely healed. Harry didn't speak, just struggled, trying to break free from the rope. Snape doesn't look like a nice guy, does he? He's flying around like a giant bat, and he's very helpful to us. With him there, who can doubt that? But, poor, stammering Professor Quirrell. Quirrell waved his arms dramatically, like a performer on stage. And Alexis, he is just a brat who has not grown up. He will only hide under the protection of Grindelwald and Dumbledore, and yell at others. Oh, he also cries loudly. Quirrell was in no rush to take action. He seemed to enjoy this moment of victory. He wanted to say something sarcastic and declare his victory, but a weak voice came from him. Go quickly, go get the magic stone. Quirrell's movements like a musician stopped abruptly. Deep fear flashed in his eyes, and he quickly turned back to the mirror of Verized. Harry struggled while looking around the room. There was only a strange mirror in the center of the room, and the rest of the room was empty. Did they guess wrong? Or is the Philosopher's Stone hidden in the mirror? Seeing Quirrell approaching the mirror of their eyes, Harry struggled even more. Suddenly, his struggling movements froze. Chapter 106. Do you think you are smart? Bones in pieces of familiar voice appeared, and then the spell passed over Harry's head and hit Quirrell in front of the mirror of their eyes. Armor protection. Quirrell reacted quickly, and his movements were very agile. As the spell was uttered, the crushing spell struck in front of him, was deflected by the invisible air, and shot towards the roof, knocking down several pieces of gravel. Mr. Alexis. Harry saw the person clearly and shouted happily, Alexis. Quirrell looked calm and slowly read out the person's name. Alexis smiled at Harry, waved her wand, and untied the ropes around him. Quick, it's him, it's him. Harry ran to Alexis and said urgently, he wants to steal the Sorcerer's Stone. Alexis pulled Harry behind her and nodded slightly. I know. Harry, you did great. As he spoke, without raising his head, he waved his wand and broke the spell from Quirrell. Alexis. Quirrell did not attack again. He stood in front of the mirror of their eyes and asked in a deep voice, why are you here? I clearly saw you. See, I left Hogwarts and went to London, right? Alexis took over the conversation and said with a smile, do you think I'll fall for the same trick twice? I think you were the one who wrote to me before school started, right? Alexis was talking about how, when he and Harry were staying at the Byron Hotel before the start of school, he suddenly received an anonymous letter asking him to take Harry back to Hogwarts. The letter asked him to rush back to Hogwarts immediately, to prepare for the freshman dinner, and also said that Dumbledore had discovered that he had sent Hagrid eggs. At that time, Horn had brought the letter back, so he didn't think much about it. He just subconsciously thought it was sent to him by Dumbledore. He even changed his mind because he was afraid of Dumbledore nagging him and decided to take the Hogwarts Express back with the new students the next day. Originally he was afraid of getting along with children on the train, so he had decided to take Harry back and advance Hogwarts. He even asked Horn to pretend to be lost while carrying the letter, which cost him a lot of dried meat. As a result, after Horn left with the letter that had been restored to an unopened state, Fox arrived with Dumbledore's letter. Apart from telling him to prepare lesson plans, it didn't mention anything about the dragon eggs. Originally, he thought Dumbledore had sent a letter in advance, so he didn't plan to mention it in the second letter. But after he returned to Hogwarts for so long, Dumbledore didn't mention anything about the dragon eggs. This made Alexis suspicious, but he didn't think much about it. Until today, he received a letter from Mundungus. Seeing the same unsigned method on the letter, Alexis became suspicious. First of all, Mundungus never used public owls when sending letters, especially when making appointments. He was very vigilant and even used middlemen to deliver letters for a long time. Secondly, there was no signature on the letter, only Mundungus's handwriting, which was also very sloppy and didn't look like much. Finally, and most importantly, Mundungus would not ask him to meet in London. The British Ministry of Magic is located in London, and the Aura Command is also there. Auras from all over the UK are concentrated in London. This is very unfriendly to Mundungus, who wants to do a small business anytime and anywhere. If you want to meet, it should be in Hogsmeade, or somewhere deep in the mountains and forests, in the nooks and crannies. In short, Mundungus would not ask him to meet in London. No, Mundungus still owed him more than 3 gold galleons after contacting him, and Mundungus wouldn't even ask him to meet. After this incident aroused Alexis's vigilance, he immediately thought of a quill that could imitate other people's handwriting, as long as the magic was applied. He even made the pen, and made a lot of money using it. A few days ago, he used this quill to forge a letter from a first-year wizard granting permission to leave the campus. Thinking of this, Alexis immediately turned his attention to Quirrell. He first used the trick and pretended that he had been deceived. He went to the offices of McGonagall, Flitwick, Snape, Sprout and other professors and had a big fight with them so that the students in the corridor could hear and even see him. Then he ran to Hagrid, told him everything about his plan, and got away to deal with Luwendy. Finally, he swaggered out of Hogwarts, hid in the Shrieking Shack in Hogsmeade Village, and waited silently. You are the one who wrote to me today and asked to meet in London, right? If I really go to the appointment, I will just stand in the cold wind and wait all night, but I won't see anyone, right? Quirrell, oh, maybe it's more appropriate to call you Voldemort. Alexis raised her eyebrows, somewhat proudly. Voldemort, do you really think you are smart and everyone else is a fool? Alexis rubbed Harry's hair, and the soft hair was immediately messed up. Even a few first-year wizards can guess your plan. Let me tell him, let me tell him. Quirrell was so angry that he was trembling all over. He seemed to have been pretending to stutter for too long, and he actually stuttered. He opened and closed his mouth for a long time without spitting out a single word. Then, a weak voice sounded from him. Quirrell's face flushed with morbid excitement. He took off his turban and revealed his bare head. His head is surprisingly small. Under Harry's surprised gaze, Quirrell slowly turned around. Harry quickly covered his mouth. On the back of Quirrell's head, a face appeared. The face was as white as chalk, with glowing red eyes and two nostrils as slender as snakes. Alexis Felix. The dead white face opened, and the mouth opened, handing over Alexis' full name. Tom Riddle. Alexis nodded slightly, and also handed over the other party's name. Give me the magic stone, I can give you glory. Voldemort trembled as he spoke, like an old man who was dying soon. Sorry, I feel like I'm on it right now. Alexis shrugged. He thought Voldemort would say something shocking, but the result was such a dry sentence, which really disappointed him. It was strange that he once thought that when he saw Voldemort, he would lose his mind and kill him desperately and tear him into pieces. But in fact, he was very peaceful inside, and Voldemort was not as irritating to him as seeing the grey mouse scabbers. Your glory was gained by standing on the shoulders of Grindelwald and Dumbledore. Voldemort was still trembling and talking, and Alexis was already a little impatient. He covered Harry's forehead. The moment Voldemort appeared, Harry's forehead began to hurt. Okay, stop inking. You're like a leper now. After speaking, Alexis waved her wand. All Petrochemical Chapter 107. The feeling of pleasure. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a snapping sound around Alexis, and Harry behind him only felt a force coming from him, and his whole body was pushed to the ground. Then, Alexis disappeared from the spot. This is one of the few places in Hogwarts where you can use apparition. Alexis appeared next to Voldemort, which was his blind spot. Sure enough, Voldemort reacted a little slower. As soon as he counteracted the petrification spell, he lost sight of Alexis. Alexis saw the opportunity, and without giving Voldemort time to react, he raised his hand and fired a crushing curse, and then disappeared again. Every time Alexis appeared, she was always stuck in the blind spot of Voldemort's vision. This allowed Voldemort to passively deal with the spells coming from all directions, with no time to fight back. He couldn't even hold Harry hostage. Quick imprisonment. Several ropes suddenly stretched out and wrapped around Voldemort's arms, interrupting his ability to cast the spell. Accept your weapons. Alexis appeared next to Voldemort, activated the spell, and ejected the wand in Voldemort's hand. Then, ropes wrapped around Voldemort, immediately tying him into a mess. Alexis lowered her wand and grinned. Strangely, there was no joy in his heart. Is this how you tortured James and Lily back then? Alexis walked closer to Voldemort and asked softly. Falling to the ground, Harry, who was about to stand up to celebrate after seeing Alexis defeat Voldemort, became quiet again when he heard Alexis mention his parents. James Potter? Voldemort's weak voice was filled with confusion, and after seeing Alexis's face, he suddenly realized. Yes, James and Lily, they are good. James still resisted. It's a pity that you weren't here. You didn't see James, who was tortured by the curse. He is so strong. He lasted under the Cruciatus curse for 5 minutes. Drilling the bone. Alexis flicked her wand and shouted the spell through gritted teeth. What? Quirrell screamed, drowning out the shouts of the weakened Voldemort. Quirrell's body twisted back and forth in the rope. His mouth opened, and he screamed loudly, and his nose and tears quickly flowed down. Drilling the bone, drilling the bone, drilling the bone, drilling the bone. Alexis' control was very good. Whenever the last Cruciatus lasted for a few seconds, he would pause for more than 10 seconds before applying Cruciatus again. This alternation back and forth ensured that the fragile Voldemort would not be tortured to death. But even so, the screams of Quirrell and Voldemort soon became extremely weak, as if a gust of wind could blow them away. Mr. Alexis. Harry watched Alexis repeatedly torturing Voldemort and Quirrell. At this moment, he believed what Alexis said before. I have a very good relationship with James. But he was also frightened by Alexis like this. Alexis looked back at Harry. This frightened Harry even more. He covered his mouth, controlling himself not to scream, and kept retreating. Alexis's eyes turned red, almost the same as Voldemort's. He had a scary and ferocious smile on his face, and his eyes were full of madness. This madness only lasted for a moment, and was quickly replaced by sadness, and the redness in his eyeballs also faded away. Harry, Alexis called out in a hoarse voice. He walked up to Harry, and gently touched the lightning scar on Harry's forehead. If it weren't for Lily, you will be killed by him too. He killed James and Lily, and almost killed you. Harry looked up at Alexis confusedly, and his confusion could be seen in Alexis's eyes. This confusion was fleeting, and was quickly replaced by hatred. Drilling the bone, Alexis turned back suddenly, and the wand shot the Cruciatus curse, hitting Quirrell, who was squirming on the ground. He was squirming towards the wand, while Alexis was talking. Just as he was about to grab the wand, Quirrell was hit by the Cruciatus curse again. He immediately rolled back and forth on the ground and screamed. This time, Alexis did not interrupt, but looked at Quirrell rolling on the ground with pleasure. He walked to the wand, picked it up, and put it into the pocket of his windbreaker. Then he reached into the mirror of their eyes, took out a small cloth bag, and weighed it in his hand. Harry's eyes lit up slightly when he saw the familiar little cloth bag. Magic stone. Alexis stopped the Cruciatus curse, crouched beside Voldemort, dangled the small bag in front of his eyes, and poured out the contents. A faint chocolate scent came out creak under Voldemort's expectant eyes. Alexis crushed the sorcerer's stone, revealing the brown chocolate texture inside. Produced by Felix's Sweet Shop. Try it. With a smile on her lips, Alexis stuffed the crushed chocolate magic stone into Voldemort's mouth. Seeing the sorcerer's stone turn into a chocolate ball in 1 second, Voldemort almost went crazy with despair. Alexis stood up, moved her body to block Harry's sight, and waved the wand back and forth in her hand, leaving deep cuts on Quirrell's body. Then he used restoration as before to completely repair Quirrell's robe, covering the scars, and then hung him in the air for protection, then turned around and smiled at Harry. Let's go and inform Professor McGonagall that the thief has been caught. Alexis did all this with his back to Harry. He didn't see clearly what Alexis did. He just vaguely saw a series of faint lights lighting up, and finally in a flash of miserable green light. Finally, the secret room became quiet. Mr. Alexis. Harry still didn't dare to speak to Alexis, but thinking of his two friends Ron and Hermione, he still raised his head and asked. Ron and Hermione were left in the wizarding chess room. Can you take them out? Of course, of course. Alexis smiled brightly, grabbed Harry and came to the wizard's chess room, where she saw Hermione sitting on the ground holding Ron. Hermione. When Harry saw his little friend, he quickly ran up, and the three of them hugged each other. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to find Professor McGonagall. Alexis interrupted the gathering of the three people. Hermione and Ron then saw Alexis, who had been completely immersed in the joy of being together again, and asking Harry whether he had successfully prevented Quirrell from taking the Philosopher's Stone. Hermione and Ron were a little surprised to see Alexis. They looked at Harry, then at each other, and helped each other stand up. Alexis didn't notice the strangeness in their eyes, and pulled the three of them out of the secret room quickly, returning to the corridor on the 4th floor. Let's go. Mr. Alexis, we escaped secretly. Hermione was a little hesitant. She was afraid of being punished for copying the school rules 50 times again. God knows, if that was the case, how long would they have to copy the rules? It doesn't matter. Alexis waved her hands nonchalantly. You successfully prevented Voldemort's conspiracy. This is something worthy of praise. Chapter 108. Quirrell. Professor McGonagall, Snape, Flitwick, Miss Sprout and others were quickly alerted, and everyone rushed to the mirror of their eyes. Quirrell was suspended in the air, but Voldemort behind his head had disappeared. Kieluo, tell me about your master? Alexis stepped forward and asked. The wound he had made on Quirrell had not healed, and the blood had soaked through his robes, and formed a small puddle on the ground. Professor McGonagall frowned and used a simple recovery spell, but found that Quirrell's injuries could not be healed at all. It's Shen Feng Wuang. The sullen Snape answered Professor McGonagall's questions while looking at Alexis. Alexis shrugged, graciously admitting to the abuse of lynching. Without Voldemort's protection, Quirrell returned to his timid and cowardly character. Before Professor McGonagall could ask any questions, he trembled and took action. From the moment he was hired as a defense against the dark arts teacher, he was ready to do something big and make a big splash. What could be more shocking to the world than finding the Dark Lord Voldemort? In a sense, Quirrell is smart, because he actually succeeds. What Alexis had been searching for 11 years failed to accomplish, and Quirrell found Voldemort in the Albanian forest in just one summer vacation. But the reality was somewhat different from his ideal state. He did not easily defeat Voldemort, even though Voldemort was extremely weak at this time. Voldemort easily subdued Quirrell, according to Quirrell. However, Alexis felt that there might be some temptation in Voldemort's words, which aroused Quirrell's heart and caused some bad thoughts in his heart to stir up, and then he was subdued by Voldemort. According to Quirrell, he was ordered by Voldemort to break into Gringotts at the end of July. At that time, he met Alexis in the bar. He originally planned to wait a few more days before taking action against Gringotts, but he saw Alexis in the bar, which gave Voldemort a bad feeling. Voldemort thought that Alexis might take away the Philosopher's Stone, so they took action that day. Unfortunately, Voldemort was still a little late. When they entered the warehouse, there was no trace of the Sorcerer's Stone inside. This further confirms that Alexis took the Philosopher's Stone. For this, Quirrell was severely punished. In order to retrieve the Philosopher's Stone, Quirrell was ordered by Voldemort to return to Hogwarts to explore the whereabouts of the Philosopher's Stone. So Quirrell returned to Hogwarts with a remnant of Voldemort's soul. Everyone knows what happened next. Mr. Harry Potter. Snape looked at the three Harrys with a stern face. Now let's talk about the rules about curfew. Severus. Alexis stepped in the middle, blocking Snape's view. I think although they violated school rules, they did something greater. Preventing Voldemort from seizing the Sorcerer's Stone and helping me successfully capture Quirrell is a very powerful thing. At least you couldn't do it in the first grade. I remember when you were in the first grade. Snape's face became even more gloomy. He snorted and stepped back to his original position. Alexis raised her head, somewhat proudly. Now that Quirrell has said everything, the follow-up processing becomes simple. Just take Quirrell out first and hand it over to the Ministry of Magic after daybreak. The professors quickly dispersed, but Professor McGonagall stopped Alexis at the end. Where is the Philosopher's Stone? Mag asked. Everyone's attention was on Quirrell, but the attentive Professor McGonagall noticed that during the whole incident, the Philosopher's Stone had unknowingly disappeared, and the one hidden in the mirror of their eyes was only a magic stone. Just a chocolate ball. At Dumbledore's. Alexis recounted the process of entering the Chamber of Secrets for the first time, having an argument with Dumbledore, and throwing the Sorcerer's Stone to Dumbledore. Professor McGonagall, do you know where Dumbledore is? Alexis asked finally. Although the matter at school has been resolved, Dumbledore's crisis still exists. It was certainly a good thing to be able to catch Quirrell so quickly, and Alexis would not get carried away because of this, because Quirrell had been in his sights from the beginning. You don't have to worry about Dumbledore's affairs, Kit, he will take care of it. Contrary to Alexis' expectations, McGonagall seemed to really know Dumbledore's whereabouts. Professor McGonagall, please tell me where Dumbledore is. Alexis took back the steps that were about to leave the office, turned back to the table, and said seriously, Alexis, Dumbledore wrote to me specifically, telling me to take good care of you. Professor McGonagall said gently, he said that you don't need to intervene in this matter. He'll take care of it. As if afraid that Alexis wouldn't believe it, Professor McGonagall opened the drawer, pulled out a letter, and handed it to Alexis. When I opened the envelope, I saw familiar handwriting and tone of voice. He had imitated this handwriting countless times and there was no mistaking it. The letter did indeed ask Alexis not to interfere as Professor McGonagall said, and said, I did it deliberately, to let Alex return to Hogwarts. Please forgive an old man's selfishness. He is still too young, and should not be exposed to this so early. Dear Ms. McGonagall, please take good care of him. We all know that he respects you more. I believe he will listen to what you say. Alexis put down the letter in disbelief, and looked at Mag. Okay, Alexis, go back and rest. Today has been tiring enough. Professor McGonagall collected the letter and sent Alexis away. But, Alexis. Professor McGonagall interrupted Alexis. Child. She softened her tone. Dumbledore has his own sense of discretion. We should trust him. I have heard about the conversation between you. He gave you full freedom and trust, and promised not to interfere in your affairs, and he did it. Child, you should also fully trust him. Trust is given to each other, not relied on by one party alone. Alexis opened her mouth, and found that she was unable to refute. He is not good at this aspect. Okay, Professor McGonagall, good night. He had no choice but to say goodbye sadly, and left the office dejectedly. Alexis felt a little aggrieved. He felt that Dumbledore's behavior was because he didn't believe his performance. Hey, if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109. You can always trust Dumbledore. The next day newspapers were still reporting on the Yorkshire tragedy, and Dumbledore was dragged out again and again. Tensions grew between Gryffindor and Slytherin, while Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw stood aside and watched. Fortunately, thanks to the restraints of the professors, nothing too extreme happened on Monday. The little wizard suddenly discovered that Gryffindor had inexplicably increased by 100 points! This discovery quickly spread throughout the campus, and all the little wizards were shocked. Is Mr. Alexis so bold? Now you don't even have to make excuses, just go ahead and hit it like this? The Hufflepuffs were a little unable to sit still, and they looked at Alexis with some resentment. Senior, Mr. Alexis, don't forget, you are a Hufflepuff. The little wizards all looked at Alexis with strange eyes, and then extended their strange eyes to Snape. They wanted to know how Snape would fight back this time. Are you giving Slytherin 200 points for no reason? Or just deduct 300 points from Gryffindor, just because Harry stepped into the classroom with his left foot? However, the reality disappointed them. Snape didn't do anything, and he even went so excessive that he didn't even deduct points from Gryffindor. This made countless young wizards feel uninterested. Is this point deduction battle just over? Did Snape just give up? Reality quickly gave them the answer. During dinner, Professor McGonagall announced the reason for Gryffindor's extra points in the restaurant, briefly talked about the three Harrys protecting a certain treasure in the school, and announced that Snape would temporarily take over the defense against the dark arts class. Originally, when they heard that Harry and the three of them had fought against a mysterious man and protected a certain treasure in the school, the Gryffindors were so excited that they almost lifted the roof off the house. But then they heard that Snape would take over the defense against the dark arts class. The Gryffindors were collectively silent. One potions course wasn't enough for Snape. Now another defense against the dark arts course. After a brief silence, everyone, not just Gryffindor, looked at Alexis. What are you doing looking at me like that? Feeling everyone's gaze, Alexis, who was lowering his head to cut the sausage into Voldemort's appearance, raised his head blankly. Quiet. Professor McGonagall tapped the edge of the table and announced, now everyone can enjoy your dinner. Alexis looked down inexplicably, and from time to time, the little wizard looked at him with pitiful eyes. This made him wonder if there was anything impolite about what he was wearing. After dinner, the little wizards have free time. The three Harrys gathered in a corner of the Gryffindor common room. Ron, are your injuries okay? Hermione asked with concern. Madame Pomfrey has been treated. After Ron responded, his eyes turned to Harry. Harry, what's wrong with you? Why do you look so depressed? Hermione also looked at Harry. They all felt that since last night, Harry seemed a little absent-minded, and they didn't know what was wrong. Hermione guessed what might have happened in the last chamber. Harry hesitated. He kept thinking about Alexis that day. That feeling was very different from usual. He was almost certain that Alexis gave him the feeling that day that he was definitely more evil than the one behind Quirrell's head. He did not hesitate to repeatedly use torture spells in front of him. The pleasure and madness on his face when he tortured people made Harry feel scared. It was completely different from the Alexis he knew. Harry told the story hesitantly, then looked at Ron and Hermione. I trust Mr. Alexis, but I'm more worried about him, Harry said. Every time he mentions my parents, he seems very excited and unusual. I'm very worried that Mr. Alexis will always be immersed in regret and one day become like the mysterious man. The next day, Monday, Alexis suddenly receives a letter from Dumbledore. The letter affirmed his performance, highly praised his wit and bravery, and finally told him that he would return to Hogwarts soon. Dumbledore's words soon came true. Dumbledore showed up at school on Tuesday evening. Then, the evening prophet answered all of Alexis' doubts. Although Ostrich Minister Cornelius Fudge had previously contacted many MPs privately, Dumbledore still won the formal trial of the Wizengamot with an overwhelming majority. Lupin was acquitted. The congressman highly praised Lupin's courageous behavior and issued a global wanted order for Fenrir. The Wizengamot stated that they will cooperate with the Muggle government to hunt down Fenrir globally and ensure that Fenrir is admitted to Azkaban as soon as possible. The front page headline of the Evening Prophet used a photo of Dumbledore accepting the crowd and leaving the court with a smile and the expressionless and lonely figure of the ostrich minister behind him. At the same time, the report changed its tone from the previous inflammatory tone and praised Dumbledore in a disgusting manner. This article gave Alexis goosebumps. He asked Dumbledore how he did it. In response, Dumbledore just narrowed his eyes and said it's a secret with a smile. After the dust settled on the Yorkshire tragedy, the Wizengamot issued the strongest verdict, which also indicated that this matter had no news value at all, and the media quickly abandoned it. This also indicates that all the turmoil has subsided. At the same time, Dumbledore also announced another thing. Hogwarts will officially hire Lupin as defense against the dark arts teacher. Time can enter October. Lupin finally officially joined Hogwarts, which made Alexis very happy. Taking advantage of the fact that there was no class in the afternoon, Alexis took the shy Lupin, Flitwick and Hagrid to Hogsmeade Village to celebrate the reunion of old friends. The venue for the celebration was the Hogshead Bar. Alexis had already told Aberforth, so when they arrived, the Hogshead Bar was empty and there was no one else except Aberforth. Remus, welcome, welcome. Aberforth smiled, shook Lupin's hand, and then gave Alexis a bear hug with an even warmer smile. Little Alexis, that's right. Aberforth slapped Alexis on the back, pleased that Alexis had chosen the Hogshead to celebrate their reunion. Alexis was not satisfied, and he was almost knocked out by Aberforth. Come and sit down, I've got butterbeer ready. Aberforth asked people to sit down, and looked at Hagrid worriedly. Hagrid was so big that he almost reached the ceiling. Sitting on the chair suddenly made a creaking and groaning sound. Man, you have to be gentle, gentle. These are antiques. Aberforth warned Hagrid worriedly. He watched Hagrid sit on the chair cautiously and aggrievedly, and then turned around and brought a few large glasses of beer. First of all, let us warmly welcome Remus Lupin to his official appointment as a defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Alexis stood up and said happily. Several people stood up, clinked their glasses with beer, cheered, and drank the beer in one gulp. Chapter 110. The storm has passed, but dark waves are surging. When Alexis left the Pig's Head Bar, several people were already drunk. The four Alexis supported each other and staggered out of the Pig's Head Bar. Standing at the entrance of Hogsmeade, the four of them stopped in unison. There Alexis pointed to the hillside in the distance, breathing the smell of alcohol. Lupin. He turned to face Lupin, squinting at him. Remember, don't you remember? Lupin and Hagrid were a little more awake. His eyes looked very bright in the night. He nodded slightly and looked at the mottled black shadows on the hillside, feeling a little sad. Right there. We're just right there. Alexis' voice gradually became very soft. James, Black, me, and you. Cool, Alexis muttered, leaning her head on Hagrid and snoring. Lupin and Hagrid looked at each other and smiled bitterly. One of them carried Alexis on his back, while the other carried Flitwick, and staggered towards Hogwarts. In the distance, in front of the mottled black shadows on the hillside, a rugged black dog stood there, watching intently as the four people disappeared around the corner, lowered their heads, and silently walked back to the shrieking shack. Lupin's arrival injects fresh vitality into Alexis' life. In addition to attending classes and studying animals, Alexis would find time to spend time with Lupin almost every day, especially during mealtime. He would sit next to Lupin and pull Lupin to demonstrate to Snape in the distance. Snape was speechless at Alexis's childish behavior. Later, he simply refused to come to dine with other professors, which Alexis regarded as a staged victory in his fight against Snape. In the middle of the month, Alexis had planned to spend a full moon with Lupin, running to the Shrieking Shack, like they did when they were in school. But obviously Dumbledore was prepared. He found Lupin 3 days in advance and gave him a bottle of Wolfsbane potion. With the Wolfsbane potion and Alexis's neutralizing blend, Lupin survived the full moon safely. The time has come to the end of October, Halloween is approaching, and the campus has begun to take on a festive atmosphere. Just before Halloween, Alexis planned to go to the Pig's Head bar for a drink with Lupin in the evening. He came to Lupin's office, but found that there was no one there. After asking several people, I learned that Lupin was called to the principal's office by Dumbledore. Lupin, let's go and drink tonight. Alexis used the exhaustive method to match the password, and happily opened the door and entered. The words in his mouth stopped abruptly after seeing the people in the office. Ostrich Minister, Cornelius Fudge, why is he here? Alex, this is the new Minister of Magic, Mr. Cornelius Fudge. Dumbledore introduced the two of them. This is Alexis. Alexis looked at Cornelius Fudge in confusion, ignoring the hand stretched out by the other party, and turned to look at Dumbledore. Dumbledore shook his head slightly. Dumbledore, if nothing happens, I want to borrow Lupin. Alexis couldn't understand what was going on in the room, so she simply picked up Lupin and walked out. Mr. Alexis. Minister Ostrich called out to Alexis. Please wait. I'm afraid I can't let Remus Lupin go with you just yet. Alexis stopped and looked back at Cornelius Fudge. Who are you? Alexis looked past Fudge to Dumbledore. Where did this come from, Dumbledore? How come cats and dogs can walk into your office? Do you want me to ask Mr. Filch to help clean it up? Dumbledore smiled helplessly. The muscles in Cornelius Fudge's face twitched as he reached for a piece of paper from his assistant and handed it to Alexis. Mr. Alexis, things have taken a new turn, and we need to please call me Felix. I'm not that familiar with you yet. Alexis interrupted Fudge, grabbing the paper and flipping through it impatiently. This is an arrest warrant, and the person arrested is none other than Lupin. Thanks to the joint cooperation between the Wizarding world and the Muggle world, we have found Fenrir's whereabouts. Fudge said proudly. Fenrir proposed that he could hand over to us the list of all participants in the Yorkshire tragedy. In exchange, he needs us to guarantee his safety. In this list we see the name of Remus Lupin. We need to take Remus Lupin away and continue the investigation. A werewolf? No, a madman, a murderer. Do you believe what he says? Alexis faced Fudge, but she was asking Dumbledore. Didn't you agree that you can always trust Dumbledore? Why did things happen again in less than a month? He subconsciously blocked Lupin behind him. His two arms left his body, opened slightly, and one hand went deep into his arms. We don't want this either, Alakemar. Felix, we don't want this either. After all, Remus Lupin is a teacher personally appointed by Mr. Dumbledore. Fudge said hypocritically, but there are new doubts about the matter, and we must investigate clearly. If Remus Lupin is indeed wronged, we can also use this to clear his name. How to investigate? Alexis's back muscles were slightly tense and his arms were straining. He couldn't get an answer from Dumbledore, so he stared closely at Fudge in front of him, like a tiger guarding its cubs, ready to go. It's simple. Fudge didn't seem to feel Alexis' hostility. He spread his hands and explained. As long as we take Lupin away and survive the full moon night in a week, as long as Remus Lupin does not transform on the full moon night, it will naturally prove his innocence. The problem is that he is the one who will transform on that day, grow hairy, and go crazy. Alexis. Just when the two sides were at a stalemate, Lupin suddenly patted Alexis on the shoulder. He lowered his head slightly, as if he was not used to speaking on such occasions. Seeing that everyone in the office was focusing on him, Lupin's voice became even softer. Let me go with them. Lupin stood up, with guilt and remorse in his clear eyes. Alexis didn't know what he was blaming himself for, or whom he was feeling guilty about, but now was not the time for mutual humiliation. No, Alexis said forcefully. Lupin is a teacher at Hogwarts. You can't take him away with just this piece of paper. Unless you come up with the decision-making letter of the board of directors. Yes, Hogwarts has a school board. Although most of the time, Dumbledore, the principal of Hogwarts, has the final say. The board of directors is just a decoration and does not interfere with Dumbledore's decision making. But this isn't it a good opportunity for it to shine? Note 1. Alexis applauded her wit. Did you mean this? Fudge took another piece of paper from his assistant and handed it to Alexis, the tone of his voice almost rising to the sky. Chapter 111. Dumbledore is reliable. XX conclamatory. Alexis was speechless for a moment. It took him a while to realize that the ostrich minister had definitely come with full preparations. I'm afraid the investigation is fake and the implication of Dumbledore through Lupin is real. Point. I'm afraid he doesn't even know that Lupin is a werewolf. Point. He just wants to create public opinion like before. Once public opinion becomes popular, who will care about the truth of the matter? Who cares whether Lupin was involved in the Yorkshire massacre? Besides, what does Lupin's lack of involvement in the Yorkshire massacre have to do with whether he is a werewolf? Even if Lupin isn't a werewolf, who says wizards can't get involved? Take away Lupin, and then slowly delay the time, claiming that they are waiting for the night of the full moon, and take the opportunity to create public opinion. Or it does not matter, if there is nothing on the night of the full moon, they can claim that things have changed again, and they need to continue investigating, and continue to detain Lupin. Waiting for public opinion to rise. There will always be a day when no one pays attention to Lupin and everyone focuses on Dumbledore. At that time, who will care whether the starting point of the matter is true or false, and who will care that the whole process is just a scam? Everyone will just revel in Dumbledore being pushed down. In other words, the Yorkshire tragedy is not over at all. Its aftermath has just begun. Alexis wanted to know what Minister Ostrich had done to impress the school board, so that those indifferent guys issued an order that was unfavorable to Dumbledore. For the first time, it occurred to Alexis that Lucius Malfoy was a member of the school board. Thinking about it this way, this situation seems to be very reasonable. But no matter what, we can't let the ostrich take away Lupin, because Lupin's true identity can be easily exposed, and there will be no need to bother at all. Simply employing a werewolf to serve in the defense against the dark arts class is enough to discredit Dumbledore. The discrimination against Z groups in the wizarding world is much worse than that in the muggle world. Alexis was anxious, and he didn't notice Dumbledore's abnormality. Based on Dumbledore's experienced experience, he should have been able to easily detect that something was wrong. Why didn't he stop it, but instead hid aside and watched the fun? Alexis had no time to think about what Dumbledore was thinking at this moment. All he could think about was how to prevent Lupin from being taken away. I'm asking school board members to come to the school in person to announce Lupin's firing, Alexis said. Otherwise, if you take Lupin away, who will teach the students? You are just imagining that you are going to take away the defense against the dark arts teacher based on the lies of a criminal. What should the students do with the delayed classes? Even if Lupin is proven innocent by then, which of course he is, what will happen to the delayed classes? School board members must personally explain to the parents. Hogwarts does not shoulder this responsibility. The fake smile on Fudge's face slowly faded. He stared at Alexis carefully and didn't reply immediately. He found that Alexis, the scoundrel, was even more difficult to deal with than Dumbledore. Dumbledore could at least be reasonable, but Alexis was totally acting like a fool, and it was impossible to reason with him. I've long heard that this guy is a tough kid who won't grow up, but when I saw him today, he certainly lived up to his reputation. Okay, I'll contact the school board members right away, Fudge said slowly. Mr. Lucius Malfoy, okay. I hope you won't play any more tricks when Mr. Lucius arrives. Alexis sneered and stared at Fudge. Of course he would choose Malfoy. Someone like Malfoy would love to wear a pair of trousers with this ostrich. As early as Voldemort's defeat and the Death Eaters were liquidated, the cunning Lucius claimed that he helped Voldemort only after being under the Imperious curse, thereby avoiding prison. The Malfoy family tree has deep roots, and I'm afraid he may have caused the aftermath this time. Otherwise, except for Lucius Malfoy, the other school board members would be too busy to meddle in Dumbledore's business. Alexis made a mental note to Lucius and nodded gloomily. At least you can't take Lupin away now, Mr. Ostrich. After speaking, Alexis glanced at Dumbledore and then at the clock in the portrait of the principal. He pulled Lupin up and left the principal's office. Alexis after leaving the principal's office, Lupin followed Alexis. Just as he was about to speak, he was interrupted by Alexis. Lupin, listen, he said as he walked down quickly. Now is not the time for politeness. We must contact Lucius before the damn Minister Ostrich. Lupin, I won't let you be taken away. Alexis stood at the door of the potions classroom and said firmly, James left us 11 years ago, and I will never let any of you leave again. Never. After saying that, he let go of Lupin and rushed directly into the potions classroom. In the potions classroom, Snape was teaching the first year wizards. When he saw Alexis suddenly barging in, his face that was not good at making expressions immediately stretched. He put down a student's cauldron and walked up to Alexis step by step. Mr. Alexis, he said, you seem to be in the wrong classroom. Or is it that you didn't do well in potions when you were in school and you want to come in and learn more? Alexis didn't have time to argue with Snape. If it were another time, he would have had a serious talk with Snape to see who was the best Mr. Yin-Yang in Hogwarts. Malfoy. Alexis' eyes quickly scanned the classroom. Draco Malfoy, come here, your father is looking for you. Draco stood up in confusion and looked at Snape blankly. Why didn't he know when his father was coming? It seems you really went to the wrong classroom. Snape stood between Malfoy and Alexis, and after glancing at Lupin standing at the door, his expression became even more gloomy. Ever since Lupin took up the defense against the dark arts class, he had always felt that Hogwarts had changed. He hadn't figured out what had changed at first, but now that he saw these two guys standing together, he understood. He had turned back into scum. It tastes good. Severus. Alexis leaned close to Snape and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, I owe you. Lend me Malfoy. Snapper stared at Alexis with a long face and said nothing. Malfoy, come here. Your father is waiting for you. Snape didn't say anything, so Alexis implicitly agreed. Malfoy looked at Snape again and saw that Snape seemed to want to ignore him, and Alexis kept staring at him with terrifying eyes, so he could only walk over in confusion. Arriving behind Snape, Snape subconsciously stretched out his hand to stop him, but quickly put his arm down. Thank you. I owe you this once. After Alexis whispered, she picked up Malfoy and hurried out of the classroom. Chapter 112. Evil Alexis. Want me to contact my father? In the corridor, Malfoy looked at Alexis in disbelief. He had been in a daze since Alexis suddenly broke into the classroom and called out his name. Yeah. Please hurry up, Alexis said dryly. In order to avoid bad influence, he and Lupin deliberately dragged Malfoy to the corner of the corridor. Malfoy looked at Alexis, who looked fierce, and then at Professor Lupin, who looked expressionless, as if he would break his neck at any time, and could only obey. By what means, sir? Malfoy asked. Alexis was asked. Yes, in what way? He looked through the gap in the railing and saw Minister Ostrich walking down. Do you have a flu network at home? Alexis asked. Malfoy nodded. Okay, let's just use the flu network to get there. Lupin, go to my office. There is a pocket watch pressed under the wooden box. That horn holds the dried meat, just like this one. Alexis took out the pocket watch and showed it to Lupin. That's a door key. If its Kang Melee Forge comes back first, you activate it directly. Lupin wanted to say something else, but when he saw Kennelly approaching, Alexis didn't care to listen and just pulled Malfoy towards the other side. Hogwarts is connected to the flu network, but not all teachers are connected there. For example, Alexis, whose office had obviously been recently vacated, had no way of connecting to the flu network. In order to connect to the flu network, you first need to apply for permission from the Flu Network Authority under the Department of Magical Transport of the Ministry of Magic. Only after the application is approved, you can connect to the Flu Network point, and Wizards Flu Network is strictly prohibited from connecting to Muggle fireplaces. Of course, except in emergencies. If you want to go to Malfoy's house through the Flu network, the safest and most comfortable place is Dumbledore's, followed by Snape's office. But the Flu network doesn't seem to have much to do with comfort. Mr. Alexis. Malfoy swallowed hard as he watched Alexis pull out a bag of gadgets and quickly opened the door to Snape's office. His legs were shaking. So brutal. Enter Snape's office at any time. Malfoy remembered that he had challenged Alexis over his own strength and couldn't help but feel grateful that he was still alive. He felt cheated. Before challenging Alexis, he wrote a letter to his family asking whether what Alexis said on the train was true or false. The family wrote back and told him, "He lied to you." Malfoy thought the letter was a hoax. Alexis didn't have time to care about his inner thoughts. He pulled Malfoy into the office, raised the fireplace, grabbed the flywheel powder and threw it, and the flame immediately turned green. Malfoy Manor. Alexis and Malfoy stood in the fireplace, calling out their destination clearly. Then, a slight discomfort came. They arrived at Malfoy Manor. When Alexis and Malfoy appeared, Narcissa was preparing for a dinner. Judging from the decoration of the home, it seemed that they were entertaining someone important. Narcissa is the mother of Malfoy and the cousin of Sirius Black. She married Lucius Malfoy and gave birth to Draco Malfoy. Judging from this relationship, Draco Malfoy and Sirius Black are related. Narcissa was very surprised that Malfoy suddenly appeared at home. Of course, what was even more surprising was Alexis following Malfoy. "What are you doing here? This is Malfoy Manor. Please leave immediately." Narcissa pulled Malfoy behind her cautiously and said to Alexis, "Mom." Malfoy shouted anxiously. He was now very scared, fearing that his mother would anger Alexis and burn down the entire Malfoy Manor. Alexis ignored Narcissa, looking around the room, before walking over to Lucius at the dining table. "Lucius." Alexis stood in front of Lucius, staring down at him. "I don't care what tricks you're playing, you'd better keep your ears open and hear every word I say next." Lucius put down the newspaper, raised his head, and looked at Alexis. A meaningful smile appeared on his face. "Alexis?" he shouted in faint surprise. "Welcome, oh, welcome to Malfoy Manor." Lucius stood up and made a warm welcome. He even extended his hand to shake Alexis's hand. Alexis grabbed his wrist. "Lucius, we all know who you and Narcissa are. Stop pretending." Alexis leaned closer to Lucius and whispered. He glanced at Malfoy, who was held in Narcissa's arms, and threatened in a low voice. "Malfoy hasn't become a Death Eater yet, has he? When are you going to take him to your poor master? I just met your master last month. He is so pitiful. Do you want to hear your master's reaction under the Cruciatus curse? Oh, by the way, why did I forget?" Alexis slapped his forehead and pretended to suddenly realize. "You are controlled by Voldemort with the Imperious Curse." Haha. When he mentioned his son Malfoy, the enthusiasm on Lucius's face disappeared, and his expression became terrifyingly gloomy. "Alexis, what on earth are you doing? What are you doing? You know the deal you made behind the scenes with that idiot Fudge." Alexis let go of Lucius's arm and grinned at Malfoy. "You'd better find a way to calm things down, otherwise you and your wife, your identities as Death Eaters will be known to everyone in the world. Before what happened to Lupin. I promise." Seeing Lucius's hesitation, Alexis decided to add more fire. He approached Lucius, looked at Malfoy not far away with him, and said softly, "Think about it, Lucius. Malfoy's parents are both Death Eaters. They once followed Voldemort, and you were the one who took the lead in every attack. If this kind of news spreads, even if you and Narcissa are not that good, what will happen to Malfoy at school? TSK, I think he must have a more wonderful life. He doesn't know anything. You lunatic." Lucius grabbed Alexis' wrist with his backhand, gritted his teeth and growled. "Then let him know." Alexis shouted. "Then let him know the disgusting things you did." After saying that, he waved to Malfoy with a fake smile on his face. "Malfoy, come here. Your father, Lucius Malfoy, has something to tell you about your parents' true identities." Malfoy seemed to realize something. He was confused and frightened. He stood there looking at a loss. He raised his head and looked at Narcissa. Chapter 113. Unbreakable Vow. Narcissa hugged Malfoy and screamed at Lucius in horror. "Give it to him. Give him whatever he wants. Lucius. The muscles on Lucius's face kept twitching. Although he had always acted calmly, it could be seen from the slight trembling of his hand holding Alexis's wrist that he was not calm inside. He and Narcissa only have one child, Malfoy. No matter what he has done, he always hopes that he will be a tall and glorious father in Malfoy's eyes. He hopes that Malfoy can be known as the son of Lucius Malfoy. Be proud, not ashamed. Alexis looked around and waved to the house elf who was hiding at the top of the stairs and peering down quietly. He was short, with bat-like ears, a slender nose, and protruding green eyes as big as tennis balls. After seeing Alexis waving to him, he stuck out his big head in confusion and pointed at himself. When Alexis nodded, he quickly retracted and disappeared at the top of the stairs. Lucius, before you make a decision, how about we go to your storage room, find a diary, and read the contents to pass the time? Alexis shrugged and asked over her shoulder, what do you want? Hearing Alexis mention the diary, Lucius began to sweat on his forehead, and he gritted his teeth and asked, I think we should take a look at the diary first. It is said that it records Voldemort's diary from his student days. Maybe we can find some interesting things in it. Lucius sat back on the chair slumped. He lowered his head, let go of Alexis's wrist, and repeated it in a cold tone. What do you want? I'll give it to you. Dad? Malfoy had never seen Lucius like this before. He shouted out in disbelief. He was then hugged by Narcissa and turned around. Narcissa blocked the gaze between Malfoy and Alexis. Narcissa, take Malfoy upstairs first, and prepare some supplies for him to take back to school. Mr. Alexis and I have something to discuss. Lucius ordered. Narcissa looked at Lucius worriedly. Go ahead. We have business to talk about. Lucius waved his hand. Narcissa nodded and walked toward the stairs with Malfoy in her arms. Get out of here, you filthy ugly bastard. Malfoy's cry like roar sounded from the stairs, followed by a kicking sound, and then a house elf wearing a worn pillowcase rolled down the stairs. Damn it Dobby. Damn Dobby for making his master unhappy. Damn it Dobby. Dobby didn't mean it. The house elf kept banging his head against the wall, shouting a series of self-blame words. Go upstairs. Take care of Narcissa and Malfoy. Lucius yelled angrily. Dobby was startled, quickly got up, and chased after him along the stairs. The living room finally became quiet. Alexis sat across from Lucius. What do you want? Just tell me. Lucius asked in a deep voice. As long as you promise not to do anything to harm Malfoy, I can agree to it. Fudge will come to you soon and ask you to go to Hogwarts and personally announce that Lupin will be kept on probation. Alexis made the request directly without any nonsense. No matter what method you use, reject him. If Lupin is taken away, Malfoy will become a second Severus Snape. No, he'll be worse off than Snape. I promise. Lucius stared at Alexis for a long time and said in a deep voice, but I don't trust you. Alexis, we all know you have no credibility whatsoever. Alexis shrugged noncommittally. Then what do you say? Lucius was right. If Lucius agreed, he would continue to use Malfoy to blackmail Lucius, as long as necessary. What he was betting on was that Lucius didn't dare to risk Malfoy, although he won't actually do it. However, Lucius was not stupid. Although he was about to graduate, when Alexis entered school, he had heard of the names of Alexis and James. Among these four people, Alexis was the most famous, with Sirius Black the worst. An unbreakable vow. Lucius said, make an oath that I will never harm Malfoy in the future, and I promise you that. Okay. Alexis agreed after only thinking for a moment. Alexis knew what Lucius had planned. His opinion of Lucius had not changed, and facts proved that his opinion was correct. But Alexis wasn't afraid of making an unbreakable vow with Lucius. The series of subsequent effects of the Yorkshire tragedy made him alert. He could no longer rest on the reputation of Dumbledore and Grindelwald. He had to do something. Although he and Lucius have a grudge, on the other hand, Lucius is a very easy to control person. As long as he catches the Malfoy family, Lucius is an obedient puppet on strings, and all he had to pay was not to hurt Malfoy. In fact, he didn't intend to do anything to Draco Malfoy in the first place. Just as Lucius breathed a sigh of relief, Alexis spoke. I can even guarantee that no matter what happens in the future, Malfoy will get the same treatment as Harry from me." Lucius's eyes were fixed on Alexis. He did not relax, but instead tensed up, as if facing a formidable enemy. Harry is James Potter's child. With the relationship between Alexis and James, one can imagine how Alexis will take care of Harry. Alexis dares to offer such a big price. I'm afraid what he demands won't be as simple as what he just said. However, I also have conditions. Alexis continued as Lucius had imagined. You should know what Harry means to me. If you want Malfoy to receive the same treatment, you can't do it without showing some sincerity. Alexis was very satisfied with Lucius's reaction. The game between the two so far fully conformed to Professor Grindelwald's hypothetical scenario. In fact, everyone got one thing wrong. Harry was different to Alexis than James was to Alexis. "You said," Lucius said. This is considered to agree with Alexis' statement. Lucius is not stupid, on the contrary, he is very shrewd. Although in his opinion, Alexis behaved rudely, had no credibility, and was a more dangerous lunatic than Voldemort, but don't forget that he was still Dumbledore's adopted son. If the oath between the two is fulfilled, Malfoy will connect with Dumbledore through Alexis. Although he will not get Dumbledore's support, Dumbledore will only have Alexis as his heir. Sooner or later, all of Dumbledore's connections and inheritance will be handed over to Alexis, and once the oath is fulfilled, Malfoy will also receive them indirectly. With the help of Dumbledore's connections and legacy, Malfoy's power will be unstoppable. The glory of the Malfoy family will shine throughout the wizarding world. And the price for all this was that he, Lucius Malfoy, surrendered to this madman. Thinking of the future glory of the Malfoy family, Lucius felt filled with strength. Not to mention bowing to Alexis, but even asking him to swear allegiance to Alexis, he was willing. He teamed up with Cornelius Fudge and worked hard to get things done. Why? Isn't it just for the Malfoy family? Now that there is an easier way, why can't he choose? To be fair, Lucius believed that he had no fundamental conflict with Dumbledore. Note 1 note, the past grudges between Lucius, Fudge and Dumbledore will be explained in the next chapter. In addition, an unbreakable oath requires a witness in addition to both parties swearing it. The witness between Lucius and Alexis here is not Narcissa. Chapter 114, Lucius who wants to ride on two boats. When Malfoy was called down, he saw Alexis and Lucius standing together, talking and laughing, and he was even more confused. "Come, Malfoy, come and meet your Uncle Felix." Lucius greeted Malfoy enthusiastically. He was even a little too enthusiastic. Even Alexis beside him was a little bit indispensable. Malfoy walked over in confusion, looked at Alexis in disbelief, then at his father Lucius, and finally looked at Narcissa for help. Narcissa was also a little confused, but she had been married to the Malfoy family for more than 10 years and already knew Lucius. With a decent smile on her face, she trotted into the kitchen and came out with tea. "Sit down quickly, Alexis, sit down quickly. This is the tea brought back by the Luciasto people from the Far East. Try it quickly." Unable to refuse such hospitality, Alexis sat down at the dining table and chatted without embarrassment with the Malfoy couple opposite. Malfoy blinked and looked back at Dobby, who was hiding at the foot of the stairs. Dobby quickly backed away like a frightened rabbit. Malfoy snorted in displeasure and continued to stand, listening to the adults chatting about something that made him dig the floor in embarrassment. In fact, if you insist on saying it, Alexis does deserve to be called Malfoy's uncle. He is Sirius Black's friend. Sirius Black is Narcissa's cousin, and Narcissa is Draco Malfoy's mother. After all that, it's not too much to ask Malfoy to call him uncle. Alexis was in no hurry to leave, because she was waiting for another guest. The guest didn't keep them waiting too long, and when they were about to run out of embarrassing topics, he arrived. Ostrich Minister Cornelius Fudge walked into Malfoy Manor with his entourage and follower Umbridge. As soon as he entered the room, he felt something was wrong in the atmosphere. Lucius was not as enthusiastic as when he first found him, and even the ugly and hateful house elf was not polite to him. When Fudge saw Alexis, he realized that something was wrong. Ostrich, oh, no, hello, Minister Fudge, I didn't expect us to meet again so soon. Alexis sat on the chair without getting up. She just tilted her head and waved to Fudge, showing a hateful smile. Lucius, I came here to tell you. Fudge glanced at Alexis, ignored him, and faced Lucius directly, ready to tell his purpose. In order to avoid long nights and many dreams, he felt that he should finish the matter first. Minister Fudge. Lucius interrupted him. Tomorrow is Halloween, and I want to stay with my family. It's rare for Malfoy to come back, and his teacher, my dear best friend, Alexis will personally escort him. I'm very pleased with Dumbledore's tenure. That's what the school board means as well. Lucius' words sounded confusing, and seemed to have no purpose, but Fudge was vaguely aware of the intention behind his words. Fudge looked at Malfoy, who was standing next to Alexis, as obedient as a quail, and then at Alexis, who had a malicious look on his face. When Lucius came to him, he said that he thought Dumbledore would have a bad influence on Malfoy, and wanted to oust Dumbledore from the position of principal of Hogwarts. Note 1 for Lucius, targeting Dumbledore was for Malfoy. It can be said that he did this entirely to give Malfoy a better education. For Fudge, by getting rid of Dumbledore, he can gain greater power. He has been living in the shadow of Dumbledore since before he took office. People say that Dumbledore is the most suitable for magic. The candidate for the position of Minister of Magic. He could succeed the Minister of Magic because Dumbledore voluntarily gave up and gave it to him. People also said that he should have listened more to Dumbledore. When he came to power, people kept saying that he should learn from Dumbledore. When the Yorkshire tragedy broke out, some people said that this would never have happened if Dumbledore had been Minister of Magic. Dumbledore, 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 it's Dumbledore every day. Fudge's life is already filled with countless Dumbledores. He doesn't want Dumbledore, he wants to be himself. Dumbledore is a big mountain standing in front of Fudge. This mountain makes him breathless. Only by getting rid of Dumbledore can he feel that he is really the Minister of Magic and not Dumbledore's shadow. So when the storm of the Yorkshire tragedy had subsided, when Lucius came to visit him, the two hit it off. Lucius secretly used his strength while Fudge attacked head on. Together, they ousted Dumbledore and made him infamous. In fact, the purpose of Lucius and Fudge's actions has not changed from beginning to end. What has changed is the development of the situation. In the past, the two of them had a common enemy. His name was Dumbledore, so the two hit it off. Now Dumbledore has indirectly become a Lucius ally through Alexis, and Lucius is counting on Malfoy to help Dumbledore. Dumbledore's connections have promoted the Malfoy family, and he will naturally not continue to deal with Dumbledore with Fudge. Alexis, why are you here? Seeing that he couldn't get recognition from Lucius, Fudge turned his attention to Alexis. Fudge calculated well. Alexis arrived here first, and then Lucius's attitude changed. So, as long as he drives Alexis away and makes them enemies again, he and Lucius will become allies again. It's a pity that he made a wrong calculation. The unbreakable oath is not a joke. Once you break the oath, you will die. Mr. Lucius, if you need, I can call a team of Aurors over. Fudge turned to Lucius again. He is breaking in illegally, and it is illegal. The Ministry of Magic firmly protects your interests. Alexis looked at Fudge in amusement, watching him show his power there, as if he had completely controlled the Ministry of Magic. Seeing such a thick-skinned person like Lucius, his face began to twitch, and he almost couldn't help laughing. Then, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Minister Ostrich, I was invited by Lucius. It's not about trespassing, but you. It seems you didn't receive the invitation, right? Alexis looked at Lucius playfully. From Lucius's attitude just now, Alexis had already noticed that he wanted to please both sides. This is not okay. Since you have made an unbreakable vow with him, you must choose your side immediately. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing if he gets sick and goes crazy and hurts friendly troops. Minister Fudge, if there is nothing else, please leave. I'm entertaining guests. Please forgive me. Lucius was silent for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, Chapter 115, Alexis is the one worthy of trust. Lucius chose to take sides, much to Alexis's satisfaction. Minister Ostrich left Malfoy Manor with an exclamation mark on his forehead and a look of reluctance on his face. Seriously, Lucius? Alexis said seriously, after sending Fudge away. You know what I'm saying. You'd better give it to me. It will bring you a lot of trouble. even Voldemort's entanglement. Alexis was talking about the diary, which was a diary that Voldemort gave to Lucius for safekeeping. Lucius didn't know what it was, he only knew that it had a spell on it. In fact, this diary from student Tom Riddle is one of Voldemort's many Horcruxes. Horcruxes are items created by dark wizards to store soul fragments in order to make themselves immortal. In order to split the soul fragment, the wizard must commit murder, and killing in self-defense or to protect others is not enough. The murder must be committed intentionally and consciously without feeling remorse for it. After a murder is committed, the soul fragments must be separated and stored immediately. All in all, the process of making a Horcrux is very demanding. The first known Horcrux in history was made by the despicable Herbo, a dark wizard in ancient Greece. Apart from him, Alexis only knew that Voldemort had indeed made a Horcrux. Other wizards who claim to have successfully made Horcruxes have never seen their Horcruxes, and the despicable Herbo only made a Horcrux. Generally speaking, the process of splitting the soul is very painful, and it is unlikely that anyone can persist in splitting the soul several times. In this respect, Voldemort was an anomaly, or a genius. With Horcruxes, even if a wizard is killed, he can be reborn in a sense through the soul fragments on the Horcruxes. Alexis once flipped through a book called Poisonous Magic in the restricted area of the Hogwarts library. This should be regarded as the most evil book in the Hogwarts collection and the most complete record of black magic. There is no information about souls in its records of the device. On the contrary, on the island of Nurmengard, Alexis spent time reading Advanced Black Magic Revealed, which described the production of Horcruxes in great detail, but the book also warned that splitting the soul would cause the soul to become very unstable. When Alexis thought about it, the reason why No-Nose was acting crazy might be related to the instability of his soul. After all, his soul was literally broken into 8 petals. Alexis killed the part of the soul that possessed Quirrell, but he did not let down his guard, knowing how history would play out. The bald guy is bound to come back. Hearing that it was related to Voldemort, the muscles on Lucius's face trembled. Lucius. Alexis leaned closer to Lucius and said in a voice that only 2 people could hear, "You can't always be in 2 boats. Since you have chosen to ally with me, you'd better abide by it honestly. I won't treat you like Voldemort. I can provide more help than Voldemort, who everyone shouts about. What are you still hesitating about? Are you holding on to some illusory hope? I can tell you clearly that this is your best and only chance to clear your name and come ashore. If you miss this opportunity, even if I don't tell you, sooner or later others will know that you are not under the Imperious curse. By that time, you really won't be able to clean yourself up. Keep your oath honestly and follow me. You will have a much better future than following that bald man. Things that are not tolerated by the majority of people are doomed to failure. In fact, you should know this, such as the public opinion incident you are hiding behind your back this time. Voldemort's schism is destined not to be tolerated by most people. He is doomed to fail from the beginning. Even if he can make a comeback, the outcome was already doomed when he first acted. Think about it. I'll give you time. Alexis took out his pocket watch and looked at the time. Lucius, I hope I can have the honor of having lunch at Malfoy Manor. Of course. Welcome. It's an honor. Lucius nodded with a stiff smile, looking worried. Oh, no. Malfoy sighed and turned to look at Narcissa. Mom, can I go back to my room? Narcissa was preparing food and looked at the 2 people at the table after hearing this. Lucius was still weighing what Alexis said, and he was naturally beautiful at not caring about such small things. If he devoted himself to Alexis wholeheartedly, he believed that Alexis would not care about such small things. Of course can. Alexis said with a smile. Malfoy rolled his eyes, turned around and ran back upstairs. The living room became quiet. Although Narcissa was not sure what Alexis said to Lucius, she could tell from Lucius's expression that he was thinking and making choices carefully, so she also consciously let go. Move lightly to let Lucius think clearly, and try not to disturb Lucius's thinking. Alexis sat on a chair, holding a newspaper, and reading it boredly. Time passed slowly, and just after Narcissa had prepared all the food, Lucius finally made a move. He looked up at Alexis. Okay. He gritted his teeth and said, I hope you can abide by your oath, and not play tricks on the Malfoy family. Of course you made a wise choice. Alexis smiled slightly, paying no attention to Lucius's warning. Lucius got up and took Alexis towards the basement. He drove away the house elves and led the way with his own lamp. The basement of Lucius's house is not messy, and there is no peculiar smell in the air. After the two people closed the door to the basement, only the lamp in Lucius' hand emitted a faint light in the huge space. He placed the lamp on a large box, then took out a key and opened a box that was half a person tall. "Alexis," Lucius said suddenly. He turned his head with a hint of gritted teeth in his voice. He didn't know whether he was angry at Alexis for forcing him to make an unbreakable vow, or he was afraid that he had handed the reins of the Malfoy family into Alexis' hands. "You keep your promise. You can't betray the Malfoy family, otherwise okay, Lucius." Alexis waved his hand. He could see that Lucius was really nervous. At this moment, he couldn't tolerate any stimulation. "Relax, Lucius. As long as you don't betray me, I will do what I said in my oath," Alexis said. Lucius stared at Alexis for a moment, then turned to rummage through the box. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116. The Iron Triangle is about to become 4 people. Finally, Lucius handed the diary to Alexis. This is a notebook only 1 finger thick, and the faded date on the cover shows its age. Alexis opened the diary and looked at it, but it was blank. "The mysterious man gave it to me at the last moment and asked me to keep it safe. It is said that a curse was placed on it. I have not touched it." Lucius stepped forward and said. After the diary came into his hands, he did not study it carefully out of fear. At this time, Alexis opened the diary, making him a little curious as to what was recorded in it. But after seeing that it was blank, Lucius thought Alexis was looking for some record and quickly explained. Evil curses are different from other evil curses. They are a large category, ranging from pranks such as sticks, stuck in front teeth to all kinds of weird and unpredictable curses. They all fall into the category of evil curses. Wizards often cast jinxes on important items to prevent them from being picked up and hidden by muggles. Alexis closed the diary, put it in her arms, and nodded at Lucius. "You made the wisest choice, Lucius." Alexis said so. "I hope it's as you say," Lucius replied, raised the light, and led Alexis out of the basement. Alexis took Malfoy back to Hogwarts in the evening. In order to express his sincerity, he did not go to see Lupin immediately. Instead, he took Malfoy to visit the teachers of the classes he had missed one by one, and took Malfoy's place. Fu explained why he didn't go to class. After walking around for a while, Alexis returned to the office. Lupin was dozing on his desk when he heard the door open and raised his head. "It's done." Alexis waved her hand and smiled at Lupin. Lupin is not good at words. Even though he has been at Hogwarts for more than a month, his attitude toward Harry seems to be lukewarm to outsiders. Only a few people know that when he sees Harry every day, how joyful it is. The same was true at this time. If they didn't know Lupin, no one would have guessed how excited he was just from the appearance. Thank you, Alexis." Lupin shook Alexis' hand and thanked him. "Do we still need to say thank you?" Alexis smiled and said, "I believe that, if it were you, you would definitely make such a choice." The two chatted for a while, and then Lupin noticed Malfoy behind Alexis. From the moment Alexis saw him in the headmaster's office in the morning, to the moment Alexis was followed by Malfoy, Lupin quickly guessed everything. Lupin is not stupid, he is just taciturn, so he looks a bit dull. In fact, he is very smart, at least 100 times smarter than a so-called smart person who takes the initiative to talk to the bald man. "Thank you." Lupin guessed that Alexis must have made some kind of deal with Lucius, and he was even more moved by the matter that had just been settled. Alexis and Lupin were busy exchanging pleasantries and ignored Malfoy, which made Malfoy feel that he had been left out. When had Mr. Malfoy ever received such neglect? Wherever he goes, is he not the center of attention? Despite his father's orders to support Alexis, his cheap uncle, he still felt angry. "What are you humming?" Alexis would not be so polite when facing Malfoy. His father Lucius had the connections and the strength to prevent Alexis from using force, and the whole thing did not allow him to use force. Malfoy did not have this capital. Alexis believed that, as long as he didn't torture Malfoy to death, Lucius wouldn't even dare to express his anger to him. "It's time for me to go back, Alexis." "Uncle." Malfoy put on an awkward posture, raised his head and said, deliberately biting the word uncle very hard and stubbornly expressing his dissatisfaction, "Wait a minute." Alexis stopped Malfoy, frowning and looking down at the pampered young master. In fact, Malfoy is not pampered. Although Lucius has been cultivating him and instilling in him boring ideas such as pure blood, glory, Malfoy family, supremeness, etc., this does not represent Malfoy's liver-pampered life. Lucius is not a fool. He will not train his heir, his pride, and the future of the Malfoy family, Draco Malfoy, into a simple-minded young man who is ignorant of the world. Go to Gryffindor to find Harry. Ask Harry, Ron and Hermione to come. You should come too, Alexis explained. Malfoy was heartbroken. This is treating him as an errand boy. But Malfoy didn't dare to resist. Lucius taught him many things, but there was one thing he learned very well, assessing the situation. Now the situation is stronger than others. Even his parents have made it clear that they will hand him over to Alexis. How can he resist? Malfoy glared at Alexis angrily, turned and left the office. "Alexis, I'm afraid this doesn't suit Harry." Lupin looked at the wooden door that was slammed shut and said worriedly, "Lupin, I'm not just doing this for Harry." Alexis pulled up a chair and sat down and said seriously, "I don't expect Harry and Malfoy's relationship to be like ours. Of course, if they can become good friends, that would be the best thing. But Harry and Malfoy should not continue to be hostile. From the time the two met until now, the hostility between them has become more and more intense, which should not be done. The Malfoys will be of great help to Harry. It will be good for him." Lupin looked at Alexis in disbelief, as if it was the first day he met him. "Do you also believe in the damn pure blood glory thing?" Lupin was a little angry. "It doesn't matter whether I believe it or not. What's important is that doing this will be good for Harry." Alexis shook his head and said, "And it's not just for Harry. It's for us." "For us?" "That's right." Alexis nodded. "Blake has been out of prison for a month, and we still haven't met. This means he is in trouble. Lupin, Black can't hide forever. We can't let him live in such darkness forever. There was no way to clear Black's grievances before, but today's incident gave me a good inspiration. If we can unite the Malfoy family, we may be able to leverage the Wizengamot." Chapter 117. Ambition is sprouting. It can also bring about changes in this wizarding bureaucracy that irritates me, Alexis added silently in her mind. This is not the right thing to say to Lupin at the moment. Among the four of them, Lupin is cautious, but has a strong sense of justice in his heart. James is arrogant but kind-hearted, and Sirius Black is impulsive and irritable. But, well, he's impulsive and irritable. If he doesn't do something, when Dumbledore and Grindelwald die of old age, without their protection, he, Lupin, Black, and even Harry will face an extremely serious situation. If we don't prepare early, are we waiting for disaster to strike? Or become an aura, as historically was the case? Come on, even if Rufus is impartial and selfless, and can guarantee the independence and purity of the Aura Command, he has never heard of Azkaban escaped prisoners or werewolves in the Aura team, as well as murderers. It feels like a child raised by the Dark Lord since childhood. They are destined not to be tolerated by the mainstream of the wizarding world. Today's event is a good example. Dumbledore did not intervene. He chose to stand by and watch. Alexis believed that, if there was a problem, Dumbledore would still take care of it. But what happened today made Alexis suddenly understand something. What belongs to him is different from what belongs to Dumbledore or Grindelwald. If he had the influence of Dumbledore or Grindelwald, would the ostrich minister and the sweet old woman cause trouble for them like this? He wouldn't even dare to be in fear. Grindelwald said, "No matter what you do, keep your eyes open and find like-minded allies first." Alexis also heard a saying, while traveling in the Far East, "Many people are powerful." He felt that Lucius Malfoy was a very good ally. In short, what happened today gave him a sense of crisis. Such reasons obviously failed to convince Lupin. However, Lupin did not continue to object. Among the four of them, Alexis was the smartest, and he believed in Alexis. He asked because he was too shocked by Alexis' alliance with the Malfoy family. That's it. Malfoy found Harry and the three of them in the restaurant. Before that, he had almost walked around the school. When he saw the colorful restaurant, even Malfoy, who had lived a good life since he was a child, couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. 1,000 bats fluttered on the walls and ceiling, and 1,000 others hovered over the dining table like low dark clouds, making the candle flames in the pumpkin belly flicker. Delicious food suddenly appeared on the golden plate, just like at the banquet at the beginning of school. The little wizards were sitting at the dining tables of their respective colleges, enjoying delicious food and laughing with their good friends around them. Except for Alexis and Lupin, almost all the teachers are here as well. Hey, Malfoy. Come here. A Slytherin spotted Malfoy and secretly waved to him, telling him to hurry over. Malfoy was still hesitating when he saw Dumbledore, who was sitting in the middle of the professor, suddenly stood up. Mr. Malfoy. Dumbledore's kind smile made Malfoy unable to recover. It seems that the matter between you and Alexis has been settled. Dumbledore was wearing a dark purple crescent robe and a brown fedora hat with a black ribbon around it. This was the set Alexis had given him. Mr. Malfoy, can you call Alexis and Professor Lupin over? Dumbledore's eyes narrowed, and he wore a peaceful smile, making people unconsciously relax their vigilance. By the time Malfoy reacted, he had already led Alexis and Lupin to the restaurant. And it was only then that Alexis remembered again that today was Halloween, and the air in the corridor was filled with the sweet scent of pumpkin. Hogwarts Halloween dinner is a tradition, and one of the few celebrations that students look forward to, so it's a very lively night. The next day was Halloween, and the students were even happier. Sometimes it's hard to explain why they are happy. It seems very simple for the little wizards. Just one festival can make them excitedly prepare for a long time, and then welcome the arrival of the festival in a sacred way. Alexis couldn't do this, even though he had once been as excited about a festival as the little wizards were. So Alexis was troubled. Halloween has passed, but the lingering shadow of Halloween has not dissipated. Affected by the festival, students often cannot concentrate in class, either in 2 or 3 whispering, or alone in a daze, as if they are still reminiscing about the festival. Not only did Alexis find out, but Lupin's defense against the dark arts class was even more miserable. If he hadn't been quite experienced, half of the students at Hogwarts would have been sent to Madame Pomfrey. Of course, it was not just this incident that troubled Alexis, but also Malfoy and Harry. That day after Halloween, Alexis introduced Malfoy to Harry and the three of them, and things were not going well. Harry lowered his head and said nothing in protest. Ron's face was full of anger. He even shouted, "Mr. Alexis, you can't do this." Even Hermione looked disgusted. Alexis thought for a while before remembering that it might be because Malfoy had scolded Hermione. Alexis has never been called a mudblood, so he can't personally understand what it feels like, but he knows the seriousness of the word. Lily began to distance herself from Snape because of his stupid name of mudblood. After remembering this incident, Alexis asked Malfoy to apologize to Hermione and promise never to utter the word mudblood again. Malfoy was very unconvinced, but under Alexis' intense gaze, he could only give in. His submission had little effect. There is still a long way to go before the 3 Harrys can accept Malfoy. On top of that, there was another person giving Alexis a headache. Mundungus had disappeared since the last time he sent him a message. Originally Alexis would not have any idea about Mundungus' safety, but considering that Voldemort had forged Mundungus's handwriting in an attempt to deceive Alexis, he believed that Mundungus was not safe now. Although Alexis killed Voldemort in the secret room where the Mirror of Verized was hidden, he knew that Voldemort would not die so easily. He wrote several times to Mundungus, but strangely, the letters never arrived. Mundungus seemed to have disappeared from the world, completely out of touch. Besides that, there's Dumbledore. Although there was nothing unusual about Dumbledore and his position as headmaster was still secure, Alexis would always feel tingly at Dumbledore's smiling expression every time she met him. I'm afraid this old man is suffering from some kind of mental illness. Chapter 118, Quidditch once a year. The days were spent in triviality and distress. As November entered, the weather began to get colder. The annual Quidditch match begins. This is another festival that little wizards are passionate about. As the Quidditch match approaches, the students' inattention in class becomes even more apparent. According to tradition, each house at Hogwarts has a Quidditch team, and the 4 teams will play 6 single round robin matches. The opening match of Quidditch was Gryffindor vs Slytherin. This game touched the hearts of almost all teachers and students in the school. Last year, Gryffindor defeated Slytherin by a huge score. It was said that it was an almost one-sided massacre. All Gryffindors have sharpened their knives and are preparing to avenge their humiliation this year. It was precisely because of last year's fiasco that Harry was trained as a secret weapon. As the competition approached, Harry's training began to increase, and sometimes he didn't even have time to complete his homework. Point of course, it wasn't his fault. Even Professor McGonagall was getting nervous. There is a strong smell of gunpowder between the 2 colleges. They already dislike each other. Now that the competition is approaching, the little wizards are about to take out their wands and have a fight. It's past 10 in the morning. Alexis' office is broken into. Originally he had a big class, but when the class time was only half over, the little wizards in the classroom had already become absent-minded. Even the most well-behaved Hufflepuff was frequently distracted. At noon, the opening match will begin. Alexis knew that the hearts of these little wizards had already flown to the Quidditch pitch. He did not embarrass them. After leaving his homework, he announced the end of get out of class nearly half an hour in advance. The little wizards cheered. It took them less than a minute to make the originally full pharmacy classroom empty. Alexis, come on, this is Harry's first game. Lupin shouted excitedly as he rushed into the office. Alexis grabbed his windbreaker. It seemed he only had windbreakers, and put it on, and was pulled into the Quidditch pitch by Lupin, who was full of excitement. Lupin had chosen his seat early, pulled Zixis and squeezed past the little wizard, came to the seat and sat down. Of course, as a graduate of Gryffindor and a good friend of the team's best seeker, what reason did he have not to choose Gryffindor? The spot Lupin chose was even right in the middle of Gryffindor. Lupin. Alexis looked around. This familiar lively scene made him feel like a drop of water falling into a frying pan, a little out of place. If it was a game between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff, you wouldn't want to drag me here too, would you? Alexis complained. Although he is not as enthusiastic about Quidditch as most wizards, he will still choose to support his own house when it comes time to do so. What are you talking about? Except for that scene, just come here, Lupin said, giving Alexis a pair of binoculars. This is a must-have item for watching Quidditch matches. At Quidditch matches outside schools, especially during the World Cup, there will be many vendors selling them outside the venues. I don't need it. Alexis returned the binoculars to Lupin and took out a small bottle of dark blue potion from his pocket. There were a few reddish-brown stars twinkling in the dark blue liquid, which looked like a deep starry sky, which was very charming. Quick, give it to me quickly. Seeing the potion, Lupin grabbed it excitedly and uncorked the bottle. Contrary to its beautiful appearance, as soon as Lupin pulled out the plug, a stench shot up into the sky, almost knocking down several little wizards around him. Lupin seemed to be familiar with this potion. He held his breath and quickly dropped the potion into both eyes, then quickly closed the cap and threw it back to Alexis. Hey, this is a vision potion. Alexis was dissatisfied with Lupin's treatment of his precious potion. The vision potion, which he made himself, allows the user to freely adjust the pupils before the potion dries up. In other words, this potion can allow people's eyes to see further or in more detail. Perfect for watching Quidditch matches. This is much more powerful than binoculars or something. You also invited Hagrid? Alexis looked around boredly, and when he saw the obviously larger seat next to him, he asked aloud. Hey Alexis, say Hagrid. Hagrid arrives. Hagrid, who was wearing a moleskin coat, smiled happily, squeezed past the little wizard, sat down next to Alexis, and then patted Alexis on the back with a palm as big as a cattail fan. Alexis was a little worried that once Harry found the golden snitch, he would get excited and shoot himself to death. Lupin, I have a better view here. Let's change seats. Alexis stood up and changed seats with Lupin, who looked grateful. By 11 o'clock, it seemed that all the teachers and students of the school were in the stands surrounding the Quidditch pitch. Alexis's side had turned into a sea of Gryffindors, with fanatical faces and neatly dressed robes, bursting into cheers from time to time. This was very similar to a football match that Alexis was invited to watch when he was traveling in Europe. The enthusiasm of the audience seemed to overturn the entire stadium. Alexis struggled to find a familiar figure in the crowd. Of course, he also used the vision potion. Not only him, but Hagrid also used it after learning that Alexis was carrying a vision potion, which allowed them to see more clearly and know that Harry had found the golden snitch earlier than others. Snape sat in the front row on the Slytherin side with a serious look on his face. Professor McGonagall was right in front of Alexis. Although she behaved appropriately, Alexis could tell from her hands hidden underneath that Professor McGonagall was very excited and nervous. In addition, there was Flitwick. He didn't know what magic spell was used on himself, but he was actually floating, which gave him a very good field of vision. Soon, the members of the two teams entered the field, and the commentator's voice was clearly heard throughout the entire Quidditch field through the amplifying spell. When the two teams entered the Quidditch pitch and stood up, a banner suddenly went up on Gryffindor's side. It was about the size of a bedsheet and had the words "Potter must win" on it, with a large Gryffindor lion drawn underneath. Under the influence of the spell, the paint on the banner shone with different colors. Gryffindor must win. I don't know which little wizard took the lead in shouting, and then the whole Gryffindor followed suit. Must win. Chapter 119. Opening match. The referee today is Mrs. Huoki, and the commentator is Lee Jordan. Mrs. Huoki, holding a broomstick in her hand, stood in the center of the field, waiting for the players from the two teams. When the two teams walked up to Mrs. Huoki, Mrs. Huoki said seriously, "Listen, I hope everyone will participate in the game fairly and honestly." Harry noticed that her words seemed to be specifically directed at Marcus Flint, the captain of the Slytherin team and a 6th-year student. Marcus looked, Harry thought, a bit of troll blood. Out of the corner of his eye, Harry saw the banner flying high above the crowd, with the words "Potter must win" shining brightly above the crowd. His heart suddenly jumped for joy. He felt courageous. "Everyone, please get on your broomsticks." Harry mounted his firebolt concept. Mrs. Hooch blew her silver whistle hard. 15 flying broomsticks rose from the ground and rose high into the sky. The game begins. The quaffle was immediately snatched by Gryffindor's Angelina Johnson. What an excellent chaser that girl was, and also very charming. Jordan. Not long after the game started, commentator Jordan's attention shifted from the game to the players. Fortunately, every professor was watching him. "Sorry, Professor." Jordan quickly apologized and returned his attention to the game itself. She was really running up there, and made a nice pass to Alia Spinnet. She was a talent spotted by Oliver Wood, who was a substitute last year. The ball was passed to Johnson again, and then, oops, the Slytherin team took the quaffle. Marcus Flint, captain of the Slytherin team, got the quaffle and flew away. Flint was flying like an eagle on it. He was about to score. No. Gryffindor goalkeeper Wood made a beautiful move and intercepted the ball. Wood, brave Wood, great Wood, he saved Gryffindor. It's Gryffindor with the ball now. That's Katie Bell, the Gryffindor chaser. Brave Katie Bell. She was high above the court, darting nimbly around Flint. Ouch, that must have hurt. Getting hit in the back of the head with a bludger. The quaffle stolen by a Slytherin team. That's when Drian Pusey rushed towards the goalpost, and Slytherin made a comeback. Is Slytherin going to score? He is still rushing forward. Wood, there is only Wood in front of him. He goes for the goal. Ouch. But he gets knocked over by another bludger. What a shame. The bludger was pushed aside by Fred or George Weasley, and the two twins were really hard to tell apart. The Gryffindor beater did a great job. Johnson took back the quaffle again, and there was no resistance in front of her. She ran as hard as she could. It was like flying, to avoid a bludger. The goalpost, just in front. Come on, Angelina. Goalkeeper Blackie swoops in, misses. Gryffindor scores. Jordan kept mumbling and recounted the situation on the court and did not stop to take a breath until Gryffindor scored. At this time, the entire Gryffindor was cheering. Alexis sat on her seat and looked around, looking at the people standing up and jumping around, looking even more out of place. Awesome. Angelina. Well done. Harry was very high in the air, gliding lightly over the arena, squinting to search for the shadow of the snitch point. It was part of the game plan he and Wood developed. You hide aside first, and wait until you see the snitch, Wood said. We don't want you to be attacked early. After Angelina scored, Harry did some somersaults to express his joy. Now he was back looking for the snitch. Once, he suddenly saw a flash of gold, but it was just the reflection of the watch of one of the Weasley twins. Another time, a bludger decided to rush towards him, looking like a cannonball, but Harry ducked, and Fred came after the ball. Are you okay, Harry? Fred just yelled, and hit the ball hard towards Marcus Flint. While he was talking, the news of Slytherin's winning of the ball came over the radio. Fred didn't care to say anything more. Seeing that Harry was fine, he quickly rejoined the game. Harry was hanging high in the sky, overlooking the entire stadium. Suddenly, he saw a golden light flying past Slytherin's left ear. Found it. Golden snitch. Harry felt excited in his heart and swooped down to chase the golden stream of light. Slytherin's seeker Terrence Higgins also saw it. The two of them ran side by side towards the snitch. The chase battle between one person and one ball quickly turned into a race between two people. Harry was far ahead with his broomstick. The firebolt given to him by Alexis was not only fast, but also extremely stable. At this time, the stadium that was noisy just now suddenly became quiet, and everyone stretched their necks to chase the fiery red flying shadow. In the stadium, the players from both teams also stopped in the air. They seemed to have forgotten what they should do. All eyes were on Harry. Harry was faster than Higgins. He could see the little ball, with its wings flapping, flying in front. He suddenly increased his speed. Bang! There was an angry roar from the Gryffindors below. Marcus Flint deliberately bumped into Harry, and Harry's broomstick jerked off course, but Harry held onto it. Foul! Cried the Gryffindors. Send him off. Red card. A young wizard from the Muggle world shouted. Mrs. Hooch angrily scolded Flint, then gave Gryffindor a free kick at the goalpost. But of course, in the chaos, the snitch disappeared from sight again. This is murder. Boy, you're done. What's that golfer's name? What's his name? Alexis was stunned by Lupin on the court. He was yelling angrily at the court. His face was red and his neck was thick, and his usual cautiousness and reticence could not be seen at all. Not only was he yelling, he was trying to get through the crowd and onto the pitch, and he seemed to really want to teach the guy who hit Harry a lesson. This forced Hagrid to stop and hug him. The tall Hagrid hugged the skinny Lupin, and Lupin yelled and struggled to get away. This scene looked very funny. Chapter 120, the end of the game. There was a commotion in the stands, and things were not much better in the commentary box. Lee Jordan found it difficult to be impartial. In this way, after the obvious and despicable cheating just now, Professor McGonagall growled in a low voice. I mean, after that public and offensive foul just now, Jordan, I remind you, okay, Flint almost killed Gryffindor's seeker. I believe this happens to everyone, so Gryffindor's penalty was taken by Ariah. She passed the ball around. It went smoothly. The game continued, and Gryffindor still had the ball. After receiving a warning from Professor McGonagall, Jordan resumed his explanation, but it was obvious that his explanation was not as passionate as before. Slytherin gets the ball, Flint gets the quaffle, dodges Spinnet, dodges Bell, gets hit hard in the face by a bludger, hoping to put him on the nose. Interruption. Just a joke, Professor. Slytherin scores. Oh, crap. Jordan was still talking endlessly about the game. As the game time went by, his passion was rekindled. For this, he often received warnings from Professor McGonagall. The seeker seemed to be gradually forgotten. Harry calmed down and rode the firebolt in circles in the sky. Not only did he need to find the golden snitch, he also had to keep an eye on the opponent's seeker. But as time passed, Harry never saw the golden snitch again, which made him feel a little anxious. He couldn't help but think of what Alexis had told her about a game that lasted for months. Although he loved Quidditch, he didn't want to play the game for months. Just when Harry was thinking wildly, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a large, well-proportioned black dog sitting there outside the court, looking at the court. Is it looking at me? Harry was almost certain that the big black dog was looking at him. Even dogs like Quidditch? This discovery made Harry dumbfounded. Just as he was about to look away, a flash of gold flashed past his eyes. Golden snitch! Exclamation mark. Harry leaned down, activated the firebolt with all his strength, and chased straight towards the golden streak. Slytherin scores consecutively. Oh my god. Wood is so miserable. He is surrounded by Slytherin. Jordan was still explaining when suddenly, his eyes noticed that Harry was diving down from the sky at a speed that was surprising and desperate. Oh, look. What is Gryffindor Seeker Harry Potter doing? Jordan screamed he found the snitch. But the snitch is fast. Harry is very fast too. The distance between Harry and the golden snitch is slowly shortening. Oh my god, Harry is so fast. Higgins has spotted the snitch too. He's chasing after him. But he fell too far. He couldn't catch up with Harry. Poor Higgins could only follow Harry now. Before Jordan finished mocking Higgins, something suddenly changed on the court. The golden snitch, who was originally rushing straight down, suddenly turned around and rushed upward. As a result, Harry, who was originally closer to the golden snitch, became further away. The Gryffindors in the stands covered their mouths nervously, secretly praying in their hearts that the golden snitch would turn around and go back, and that Harry could create miracles with his conceptual flying broomstick. Wish Harry also noticed it. The golden snitch flashed before his eyes, and he could even see the golden snitch twisting playfully in front of his eyes a few times. Harry grabbed the broomstick, leaned back upright, released his hands, and held the broom with only his legs. He almost had to leave the broomstick. Oops. Harry has lost control. He's going to fall to the ground. Jordan yelled inside the stadium. Without Harry's control, the firebolt continued to rush downwards with Harry. Even without Harry's deliberate control, it rushed faster than before. It was like a meteor, falling straight towards the ground. Harry only felt a whirring sound on both sides. He tried his best to steady himself, leaned forward, and reached for the head of the broomstick in an attempt to control it. He couldn't hear the exclamations in the stands, couldn't see the big black dog running towards the field outside the stadium, and he didn't even know that his teammates were rushing towards him with all their strength, trying to help him control the situation. In front of him there was only the ground that kept enlarging. Just when many people couldn't help but cover their eyes and couldn't bear to watch what happened next, Harry finally reached the broom. Harry grabbed the broom tightly with his palms and pulled it up with all his strength. At the same time, his body leaned back and gradually weakened. In the end, after a thrilling struggle, Harry drew an arc at low altitude. His legs made 2 deep scratches on the ground and narrowly stopped in front of the stands. The Gryffindor facing him had wide eyes and a dull look on his face. There was silence in the stadium for a while, and then deafening cheers erupted. Amidst the cheers, Harry raised his right hand high, and a touch of gold appeared in his hand. He caught the golden snitch. Harry caught the golden snitch. The game is over. Gryffindor wins. Jordan jumped up from the commentary box excitedly, grabbed the microphone and shouted. As he shouted, the cheers became even louder. He made it. He's as good as James. He really did it. Lupin laughed and turned to Alexis. At this time, he was immersed in the joy of Harry catching the golden snitch. As for the foul and Slytherin, he had long forgotten it. Alexis smiled and stood up and clapped his hands. He was also happy, although he was not happy in the same way as the others. Alexis clapped his hands and looked around. He saw Snape's expression on the Slytherin side was gloomy and terrifying. He stood up and walked out of the field. This guy really can't afford to lose. Alexis smiled a little brighter. He followed Snape's figure with his eyes and noticed that Snape actually started running after getting out of the crowd. Alexis looked in the direction of Snape's running. Now he couldn't calm down either. Lupin, come with me. Quick. Alexis ignored the explanation and pushed Lupin, who was still celebrating his victory, towards the back. Unfortunately, the winner was Gryffindor. All the Gryffindors were reveling and celebrating their victory. They hugged each other with the people around them, and some even hugged each other. Their faces were red with excitement, and their mouths were full of excitement. He kept yelling something. This severely hampered Alexis' speed. The reason why Snape was able to get away from the crowd so quickly was because Slytherin had lost and was in a low state, which gave Snape a good chance to get through the crowd. Step aside. Step aside. Seeing that Snape was almost gone, He and Lupin were trapped in the middle of the crowd, which made him a little impatient. "Hey, what are you going to do?" Lupin held down Alexis' hand that was stretched into his arms. He didn't care about celebrating. He quickly approached Alexis and lied in his ear to warn him. "They're all students. You can't do that." Alexis' expression changed, and finally, with Lupin's insistence, he withdrew his hand. "I really want to see Sirius Black," Alexis said in frustration. "But they are so crazy that I can't catch them. By the time we get through this group of people, he will have disappeared." Alexis' guess was correct. When he and Lupin walked through the crowd, in disheveled clothes and finally arrived at the edge of the stadium, not only was the fleeting black shadow gone, but even Snape was nowhere to be seen. This frustrated Alexis. "Where's the vision potion? Quick, take it out." Just as Alexis was about to return with her head hanging down, Lupin suddenly shouted. Alexis's eyes lit up, and she quickly took out a small bottle, put 2 drops into her eyes, handed the bottle to Lupin, then blinked, and controlled the pupil to shrink after the liquid was evenly applied to the eyeballs. "There." Alexis pointed excitedly into the distance, and took steps to catch up. At this time, Alexis hated the ban on apparition magic at Hogwarts. In fact, he had tried to destroy it countless times when he was in school, but unfortunately he never succeeded. "Wait for me," Lupin shouted, chasing after Alexis. Chapter 121. Come on together. Outside Hogsmeade, on the hillside outside the Shrieking Shack, Snape chased the big black dog out of the Shrieking Shack. When he saw the big black dog stop, he also stopped. "Sirius Black," Snape drew his wand and shouted at the black dog, "I know it's you." The black dog turned around, his figure slowly changed, and finally turned into a strong man, standing up from the ground. It was Sirius Black. Blake's hair was very long. He seemed to have not taken a shower for a long time. His brown hair was tied together and hung limply. The thick beard under his chin was unkempt, covering most of his face. He was wearing a shabby jacket and thin jeans, still stained with dirt. But he was in good spirits, as if he had just watched Harry catch the golden snitch with his own hands, and his face was red. "Snape, coward." Black pulled out his wand and grinned in mockery. "Looks like Alexis never taught you a lesson," Black said, raising the wand in his hand, and a bunch of magic spells were directed towards Snape's chest. Snape flicked his wand to block Black's curse, which was ejected in front of him, and landed on the ground, exploding a crater. He glanced at the pit on the ground, and remained silent with a long face. Snape was even worse at talking than Lupin, and Lupin was occasionally talkative, at least in front of people he knew well. If he stayed with Snape, his boring personality would drive him crazy. When Alexis and Lupin emerged from the Shrieking Shack, Snape and Black were already in a ball, and the land around them had already become as bumpy as the surface of the moon. "It's so Blake." Lupin ducked and dodged a spell, and made a sound of surprise. The spell was cast on the wooden house, and the half-collapsed screaming shack made a gritty creaking sound, and began to rain down clods of earth and wood chips. After Snape blocked Black's crushing curse again, both of them saw Alexis and Lupin emerging from the Shrieking Shack, and they temporarily stopped fighting. Snape's face was silent, and he stared intently at Lupin and Alexis, who completely blocked his way back. His hand holding the wand quietly exerted force and almost broke the wand. "Coward, why don't you fight?" Black's arms were slightly away from his body, his muscles were tense, and his eyes were like hawks, staring closely at Snape. He naturally noticed the appearance of Alexis and Lupin, but it was different from the meeting scene he imagined. For a moment, he didn't know what to say, so he simply got rid of Snape first. "Ah." Snape let out a disdainful sneer. He looked around, his eyes passing over the 3 of them one by one, and he spoke sarcastically. "It's you 4 again. Oh, one less nuisance." This is talking about when they were students. Snape was hanged by 4 people. The 4 people present were all witnesses of this incident. As soon as he said this, the other 3 people understood what he meant. But he mentioned James. Alexis' words were swallowed back, as if they were admonitions. His face darkened, and his hand slowly reached into his arms, and touched a wand. Lupin seemed a little at a loss. He looked at Alexis, Black, and Snape, but he hesitated to speak. Lupin did not draw his wand. He felt that something was wrong with doing so. Come on together." Snape continued to speak, full of sarcasm. Aren't you good at this kind of thing? Without one person, wouldn't you be able to do it? You wanna die? Blake was furious when he heard this. With a flick of his wrist, the crushing curse hit Snape at a very tricky angle. At the same time, he took steps and ran towards Snape. Shen Feng Wuing Snape placed an iron armor spell around his body, inspiring the divine blade to slash towards Black's left chest. With Alexis and Lupin behind him, and Black in front of him, Snape didn't dare to act easily. He was prepared to hit Black with a crushing curse and finish off Black as soon as possible. He is the one who understands Alexis's difficulty best. Even in school, he is not sure about defeating Alexis one-on-one, let alone in this place, where he can use apparition at will. He had to solve one as soon as possible. In comparison, among the three, Lupin is not good at fighting, while Black is a madman and fights entirely on instinct. Snape felt that he should deal with Black first. When fighting Alexis, although every attack he makes is at a tricky angle and difficult to guard against, fortunately there are traces to follow. But when fighting against Black, a madman, he seemed to rely entirely on instinct, transforming into a wild beast. He only knew how to attack wildly, and there was no way to predict his next move point. This kind of opponent is the most difficult to deal with and the most accident prone. Moreover, if these four people were ranked as the most annoying, in Snape's heart, James, who hung him upside down, was not even number one. Number one is this arrogant, crazy, brain-filled Sirius Black, who is just like his sister Bella. Black was just as Snape expected. He made no defensive moves at all. He opened his chest carelessly, preparing to use his body to defeat Shen Feng Wuing. Alexis' temples bulged as she watched Snape and Sirius Black fight each other, like they were desperate for their lives. He has had enough. I'm fed up with the fact that these two guys don't like each other, and they start fighting each other as soon as they meet. They started fighting each other when they were in school, and they still fight each other. Haven't they had enough? He was running around here hard, guarding against Voldemort, and allying with Lucius. Why? It's good for these two guys. They don't think about anything. When they meet, they only think about each other, right? Sooner or later, I will lock you two together and let you two fight as much as you can. Enough. Alexis shouted loudly and pulled out the wand. The blue flame flew out from the tip of the wand, circled around the top of his head, and then split into two strands, trapping the two people. Alexis. Sirius Black stood in the center of the fire escape amulet, looking back at Alexis with a look like you are mistaken. The opponent is him. Finally couldn't help but take action. What a hypocritical coward. Snape was surrounded by fire shields. He was not afraid and continued to taunt at full speed. Alexis stopped Lupin, walked to the middle of the two people with a headache, looked to the left, and then to the right. The two guys had forgotten about him at this time and tried to kill each other with their eyes. Are you too annoyed? Alexis said while pinching her forehead. Cool. As he swung his arms, two fire escape flames suddenly rose up. It seems to indicate the owner's irritability. Chapter 122, Alexis yelling. Alexis forced himself to stand between the two of them, blocking their gaze. He raised his wand and pointed it at Snape. You have a gloomy face every day, as if someone owes you 1,000 million galleons. Do I owe you 1,000 million galleons? If so, follow me to Gringotts later, and I will pay you back. Can you just smile? You're a human being, not a grudge-holding machine. Don't act awkward all day long. Are you sick? Alexis spoke quickly, spitting at Snape. Have you had a friend since we met you? Snape, please make a friend. Will you die if you make a friend? Stingy and low self-esteem, good-looking and careless. Snape, can you open your heart to someone? Your life is not just about your childhood, not just about our bullying of you. Is this what you live for? Seeing Alexis scolding Snape, Sirius Black grinned widely and crossed his arms, looking like he was watching a good show. If his language organization skills were not as rich as Alexis's, he would have wanted to help him out with a few curses. After Alexis scolded Snape, she suddenly turned her head towards Sirius Black. And you? Sirius Black. The smile on Sirius Black's face suddenly stopped. He pointed at his nose blankly with his finger. When Alexis nodded, he had a "did you make a mistake" expression on his face. Don't look, it's you. Jesus, is there a second Sirius Black here? Sirius, you are 30 years old. Can you be more considerate? Sometimes I really want to cut open your brain and see what's inside. Ever since I was a student, when something happened, I just wanted to do it. Don't you have a brain? What are you? Can you use your walnut-sized brain when something happens? Alexis said, gesturing with her hands. You just want to use force to solve everything. You are 30 years old, Black. Can you think about the consequences of taking action? I thought that the past few years in Azkaban could make you change a little bit, but I didn't expect you to still be so reckless. Is your mind stuck in your bedroom full of photos of Muggle celebrities? Alexis's aura was fully activated, and her mouth was like a machine gun. For a moment, Snape and Sirius Black were scolded speechless. Even Lupin on the side shrank his neck, for fear of affect yourself. Alexis took a deep breath, pressed down on the wand, and the fire shield weakened. He took 2 steps back, and looked at Snape again. It just so happens that everyone who can be here today is here. If we have anything to say, we will make it clear. This sentence caused the audience to fall into silence again. Yes, those who can be present at the grudges and disputes of their generation have arrived, and those who cannot be present will never be present. Snape. Alexis calmed down and stared at Snape's slightly nostalgic gaze. Back then we hung you upside down and took off your pants. Snape's expression changed. The hand holding the wand began to turn white, and his face also turned pale. We did something wrong. I'm sorry, Snape. Alexis bowed slightly to Snape. He has never apologized to anyone. Even Dumbledore and Grindelwald have never enjoyed such a honor. Saying the words "I'm sorry" at this time made his face feel hot, but he felt indescribably relaxed in his heart. You shut up. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught sight of Sirius Black opening his mouth to say something on the other side, and Alexis turned around sharply and scolded him. Seeing Black stop talking, Alexis faced Snape again. I'm not going to use the excuse that we were young and ignorant at that time, and I'm not going to say who was right or wrong. What we did was what we did. How can we get over this, Snape? Tell me. Snape said nothing and continued to remain silent. Sorry, Snape. Lupin took a step forward and spoke softly. Then he and Alexis looked at Sirius Black. In fact, playing with Snape at that time had nothing to do with Lupin. It was James and Sirius Black's idea to bully Snape. The fuchsia was used by James, and Sirius Black took off the pants, and then Alexis took them and threw them out. Lupin stood by and watched the whole process. Of course, when Snape was about to cry with anxiety, Lupin also clapped his hands and cheered. Humph. Sirius Black continued to hold his arms and hold his head, refusing to apologize. Blake. Alexis came to Blake and said in a deep voice, Harry is at school. If someone hangs him upside down and takes off his pants for a group of classmates to watch, they dare. Before Alexis finished speaking, Sirius Black's eyes widened with murderous intent. Alexis held her forehead and felt the veins on her temples pulsing. He really wanted to stab this guy with a head full of muscles to death with a magic wand. Why didn't they dare? Alexis took a deep breath, suppressed the rising anger, and explained patiently. This stupid dog has been mentally ill since he was a child. Don't blame him. Don't blame him. You can't even protect yourself. How can you protect Harry? The Malfoy family, the newly appointed ostrich, Minister Fudge, and that old woman who dreams of being a girl all day long. What if they unite? With Dumbledore here, they wouldn't dare. Sirius Black said with a frown. Okay, even if Dumbledore is here. Alexis was about to laugh at this idiot. Dumbledore can't always follow Harry, can he? Do you hope that Dumbledore will always follow Harry when he eats, sleeps, goes to the bathroom, or even falls in love in the future? There will always be times when he doesn't follow. What if they carved words on Harry's arm, put a spell on him, or even killed him? What can you do? Besides, Dumbledore cannot be around forever. His influence is constantly weakening as Voldemort is gone. He was unable to completely suppress the Yorkshire tragedy this time. Alexis believed that the reason for the relapse was because Dumbledore stayed at Hogwarts all year round instead of going out to give speeches, appear in newspapers, and accept interviews. This weakened his influence and led to the suppression that should have been done. Things keep happening again and again. It's up to us. What does this have to do with him? Sirius Black thought Alexis had a point, but he still didn't think it had anything to do with Snape. He looked down upon Snape. If he didn't look down on him, he wouldn't be so proactive every time he bullied Snape. Let him apologize to the people he despises, let alone doors and windows. No cracks in the windows are left. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, Mediation Failure. Alexis was very angry with Sirius Black and turned to look at Snape. Unlike Sirius Black, Snape was thinking after hearing Alexis' words. Of course he wasn't thinking about why Sirius Black didn't apologize to him. He knew these people too well. One was arrogant, one was sensitive and had low self-esteem, and the other was full of bad intentions. Don't look at me apologizing to myself now. Maybe I'm holding something back. He was thinking about the Yorkshire tragedy. If things are as bad as Alexis says, Lily's baby seems to be in real danger. Snape thought about Quirrell, who was sent to Azkaban. Although he didn't know as much as Alexis, judging from what happened that day, Voldemort might really be making a comeback. Snape thought he knew Alexis fairly well. If he didn't really have any grudges, he wouldn't have tortured Quirrell with the sharp blade and the cruel heart. Just like him, bullying himself, for James, is to show off his ridiculous masculine charm in front of Lily. For Sirius Black, it is boring and fun, to satisfy himself. For Lupin, it is to let himself know, I'm not the worst offender. But for Alexis, I'm afraid it was really just a normal joke. He is just a heartless, ignorant kid who doesn't know what propriety is. For him, that incident was a humiliation. For him, if he hadn't always remembered it, he might have forgotten it long ago. Even though he just took the lead in apologizing, I'm afraid he doesn't understand where the apology should be. If time goes back and he apologizes, I'm afraid he will continue to do it the next day. Was he an apology? He has no idea where he went wrong. Snape retracted his thoughts and looked at Alexis expressionlessly. Snape, if you accept our apology, then it's time for us to talk about other things, Alexis said. Alexis. Snape raised his wand with a mocking look on his face. You have never changed. You have no idea where you went wrong. All curses end. A transparent light curtain flew out from Snape's wand. The light curtain spread rapidly, wrapping the fire escape guard in reverse, and then cut a gap in it. Snape slowly walked out of the fire escape guard and walked towards Alexis step by step. Alexis, you're always so arrogant. Do you think your apology can solve everything? A condescending apology. Is this a charity? Alexis couldn't help but take half a step back. He had never seen Snape talk so much, let alone Snape with such rich facial expressions and such smooth and full emotional expression. This is very un-Snape. Snape flicked his wand, and two beams of fire flew out, heading towards Alexis. Alexis raised her hand to knock away the fire, and the two fire dragons flew into the shrieking shack. After a while, smoke began to appear inside, and then a raging fire broke out. Alexis, let me out. Seeing Snape take action, Sirius Black was very anxious and shouted to Alexis. Alexis turned a deaf ear. He also wanted to test how powerful Snape was. Last time in the passage under the screaming shack, the two of them were wary and didn't use all their strength. Now it's just right. Alexis didn't rush to attack. He kept defending, dodging Snape's attacks. It wasn't that he felt guilty. Alexis didn't quite understand what guilt was. He was testing Snape's attack frequency and spellcasting habits. Only by being familiar with these can he hit the target with one blow. Soon, the area around the two people was pockmarked by Snape's angry curse, and the entire hillside seemed to have been turned over again. Sirius Black was trapped in the fire shield and could only panic, while Lupin ran over to put out the fire in the shrieking shack when it started to smoke. Finally, Alexis found out about Snape's spell-casting habits. He found that Snape liked to use the crushing spell frequently and mixed it with the magic spell. However, after the Shen Feng Wuing is issued, there will be a slight pause when switching to the crushing curse or other magic spells. This makes Snape's attacks very rhythmic, but it also exposes his habits. Alexis waited patiently, placed a series of defensive spells in front of him, and backed away step by step. Fight back, Snape growled. This was the third time Alexis had seen Snape angry, the first time, when he was hung upside down, and the second time in Godric's Hollow. Is that all you can do? Snape continued to taunt, and after casting a crushing curse, he habitually added a divine edge. The divine blade cut silently on the iron armor spell laid by Alexis, breaking the iron armor spell. It's now. Alexis waved her wand, and disappeared in front of Snape. The next moment, he appeared next to him. The moment Alexis disappeared, Snape suddenly became alert. He knew Alexis's fighting habits, and frequently used Phantom to switch positions, appearing in the enemy's blind spot, and delivering a fatal blow to the enemy. But when used, Apparition will cause the air to vibrate and make a slight popping sound. He has never heard of Alexis disappearing quietly, like he did just now. Snape didn't allow Snape to think too much. The moment Alexis disappeared, he just paused slightly and quickly turned to the left, based on his feeling. But it was still too late. Alexis beat him to it, all petrochemical. Snape raised his wand, and was only halfway through the spell, when Alexis's petrifying spell arrived, and hit him in the chest. Snape turned into a statue on the spot, motionless. Good job. In the fire escape body, Sirius Black, who had been observing the battle nervously, clapped his hands excitedly when he saw Alexis defeating Snape. Alexis put away her wand, gave an excited Sirius Black a look, and withdrew the fire shield. Sirius Black couldn't wait to run up to Snape, and was about to taunt him, but Alexis pulled him behind him. Snape, I don't know why you are so angry. Alexis waved to firefighter Lupin, pulled the two of them to stand in front of Snape, and said in a deep voice, since you don't accept our apology, it doesn't matter. But there are some things that I think we need to complete together. As he spoke, he dug around in his arms, took out a strange looking pipe, and stuffed it back. This, do you know it? Alexis took out the diary he took from Lucius, waved it in front of Snape's eyes, and asked. Chapter 124. How do you know? How do you know? This is Tom Riddle's diary. Alexis said. Voldemort is coming for Harry. What? When? Lupin and Sirius Black exclaimed in surprise, while Snape remained expressionless. He was under the petrification curse, and even if he tried to make an expression, he probably couldn't. How is Harry? Sirius Black asked nervously. Alexis shook her head. He captured Quirrell, and possessed him to steal the Philosopher's Stone. Alexis told the whole story, starting from picking up Harry, to taking the Philosopher's Stone before Quirrell, discovering that the unicorn was killed in the Forbidden Forest, and then discovering the secret of the fourth floor, and setting up a trap. The trap lured Voldemort. Since you discovered Quirrell, why didn't you take action? Sirius Black asked dissatisfiedly. Bring your brain before asking questions, okay? Alexis knocked on Sirius Black, and said with a hint of disgust. Quirrell was the defense against the dark arts teacher before Hogwarts, and the Ministry of Magic now prohibits talking about Voldemort. If you attack Quirrell, before you can prove that there is something wrong with him, Alexis will be in a lot of trouble. Lupin explained patiently. Sirius Black nodded with a icy look on his face. Alexis looked at Snape, pulled out her wand, and lifted the petrification spell. Snape lowered his hand, still holding the wand, but did not rush to do it. Have you ever heard of Horcruxes? The Horcrux? Lupin and Sirius Black looked confused. They obviously didn't know what a Horcrux was. Alexis turned her gaze to Snape. Snape remained silent. Alexis couldn't tell from Snape's elongated face whether he knew or not. Do you know? Therefore, Alexis could only take the initiative to ask questions. Snape shook his head. Note 1. A Horcrux is an item created by a dark wizard to store soul fragments, in order to make himself immortal. In order to create a Horcrux, the wizard must commit murder, and the murder must be intentional and conscious. After killing someone, the wizard must make a Horcrux immediately. This diary is one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. 1. Are there other Horcruxes? Although the other three had never heard of Horcruxes, it was clear that Sirius Black woke up to the secret of Horcruxes before Snape and Lupin. In his opinion, this was just another trick of a dark wizard, probably similar to the Soul Imperious curse or something like that. But this is not a magic spell. Nothing to be surprised about. There are so many things in this world that he doesn't know. If he were surprised by everything that he didn't know, he would be surprised to death. Well, as far as I know, Voldemort has 7 Horcruxes in total. 7? How did you know? The former was Lupin's exclamation, and the latter was Snape's question. Snape was keenly aware that when Alexis said this, it was not like hearsay or speculation at all. Instead, he was very sure, as if he was right in front of Voldemort when he was making the Horcrux. Alexis was right beside Voldemort when he was making the Horcruxes. Is it possible? Did Voldemort tell him? Snape quickly dismissed this speculation. With Alexis's background and James' hatred, it is impossible for him to have any connection with Voldemort. That's weird. How did he know? Information I collected during my travels, Alexis said while fiddling with her diary. Sirius Black held his head high, with a look of contempt and pride on his face. The contempt was for Snape. He didn't know such a thing, but the pride was for Alexis. He is indeed my good friend, and he can do all this. Collected. Lupin nodded without thinking much. Only Snape stared at Alexis' face for a long time, and remained silent. Snape was almost certain that Alexis was lying, but he didn't understand why. Maybe there is some secret that I don't want to know. Snape thought so. Can he really be resurrected by this? Sirius Black looked at the diary in Alexis' hand curiously and asked. Alexis shook her head. I do not know. In Godric's Hollow, Voldemort's killing curse was reflected by Lila's blood protection spell and hit himself. But he did not die. Maybe this is what Horcruxes are for. Lying again. Snape was pretty sure that Alexis was lying. That day at Godric's Hollow, when Alexis arrived, it was obvious that he had just experienced a fierce battle. There was no way he could have arrived at Godric's Hollow earlier than him. If he had arrived when James and his family were still alive, there was no way he would not have saved them. But how did he know that Lily's blood protection spell and Voldemort's killing curse were abounded? It's like he saw it with his own eyes. But splitting the soul is a very painful process, and it will also weaken Voldemort to a certain extent. Alexis continued. Now that Voldemort has come to find Harry, we must ensure Harry's safety. One way is to find his Horcruxes. After destroying the Horcruxes, Voldemort will become weak. Maybe if we destroy all the Horcruxes, Voldemort will become a level that Harry himself can deal with. The other way is that we go find Voldemort and kill him before he is fully resurrected. That day in the Chamber of Secrets, although Alexis used the killing curse on Voldemort, he was certain that Voldemort was not dead. After Alexis finished speaking, she looked at Snape and the other 3. He himself knew that neither of these methods was a good one. He has traveled around the world for so many years and has never found Voldemort. Obviously, the second method is not realistic. The first method is not advisable. Even if they find and destroy all Voldemort's Horcruxes, so what? Voldemort is always hiding in the dark, and no one can guarantee that Harry will be able to deal with Voldemort who has his Horcrux destroyed. Alexis clearly remembered that advanced black magic revealed only recorded that Horcruxes were a way to make people immortal, but did not record a way to make people weak. In other words, destroying the Horcrux can make the maker weak, but it is just the memory of history in his mind, which is not recorded in the book. No one knows whether this situation is true or false. Moreover, Voldemort's threat to Harry is not only him, but also the Death Eaters around him. Even if destroying the Horcrux weakened Voldemort, what about the Death Eaters around him? Those Death Eaters were enough to kill Harry 1,000 times. To put it bluntly, Harry is also a Horcrux. Do they want them to kill Harry? Although Alexis has a complete script in her head for Harry to die and come back to life, he is not in the script, and now that he has appeared, things may change. Moreover, in that script, Lupin, Sirius Black, Dumbledore, Grindelwald, Snape and many others died. This is not what he wants. Where did you get it? Snape asked. Lucius. I made a deal with him, and this diary was part of the deal. Alexis said. He wanted to join Snape, and he had no intention of hiding his alliance with Lucius. Snape nodded. This makes sense. Chapter 125. Make a plan and form an alliance. Others may be deceived by Lucius's statement of "I was under the Imperious curse. I'm not a Death Eater. I was manipulated." But Snape, the senior member of the Death Eaters, would not. He saw with his own eyes that Lucius followed Voldemort and became Voldemort's lackey. However, the alliance between Alexis and Lucius had no impact on him. This was within the scope of what he could accept. Sirius Black and Lupin were not so easy to accept. "Are you hanging out with Lucius?" shouted Sirius Black. "I will protect Draco Malfoy and provide him with certain help. In exchange, he will support me in my fight against Voldemort and the Ministry of Magic." Alexis nodded and vaguely stated the agreement with Lucius. "He is a liar. How can you trust him?" Sirius Black was very angry. He felt that Alexis had been cheated and was stupidly counting money for the cheater. "An unbreakable vow," said Snape. "If you make an unbreakable oath, Lucius can't go back on it." Alexis nodded in agreement. Sirius Black and Lupin were obviously more concerned about Alexis' unbreakable vow, and they were worried that Alexis would fall into a trap and get themselves killed. But Alexis didn't want to dwell on this matter anymore. "Which method do you think we should choose?" Sirius Black was silent. He glanced at Snape with disgust, but said nothing. "This is to protect Harry." Although he can't stand Snape, he also knows his priorities. You can teach Snape a lesson later, but the top priority is to protect Harry. "Maybe we can get the Horcruxes and lure Voldemort to the bait," said Snape. "If you know where the remaining Horcruxes are." "What are the remaining Horcruxes?" Sirius Black asked. "Tom Riddle's diary, Marva Logorn's ring, Salazar Slytherin's locket, Helga Hufflepuff's golden cup, Nagini the serpent, Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem," and Alexis paused for a moment. "Harry, this is impossible." Even with Snape's calmness, he couldn't help but denied after hearing that Harry had become Voldemort's Horcrux. "This is impossible. The first 6 you mentioned are all magic items. Harry is a human and cannot become a Horcrux," Snape said eagerly. It was more like he was trying to convince himself not to believe it. "Nagini. It is also an animal," Alexis reminded. "It is not recorded in the book that only objects can be used to make Horcruxes, not living creatures or people." "But didn't you say it must be made immediately after the murder?" Sirius Black didn't believe it either. "In Godric's Hollow, Voldemort killed James, Lily and himself." But Sirius Black wanted to say something to rebut Alexis, but for a moment he couldn't find anything to say. Deep down, he already somewhat believed what Alexis said. In this case, the method of destroying the Horcrux is simply not possible. Snape said calmly, "And if what you say is true, Voldemort will come looking for Harry sooner or later." This was one of the reasons why Alexis didn't focus on finding Horcruxes. Destroying it if you find it will weaken Voldemort, and it doesn't matter if you can't find it. He didn't think that he couldn't defeat Voldemort in a one-on-one situation. Besides, there were Lupin and others. Whether they were weakened or not was actually not that important to him. No matter how weakened he was, Voldemort was still Voldemort. He still didn't quite believe that if he really destroyed the Horcruxes, Voldemort would be so weak that any Hogwarts student could easily defeat him. To him, Voldemort was just an enemy who killed his friends and tried to continue hurting his friends. When he faced Voldemort, he had hatred instead of fear of his powerful force or cruel methods. Note: if he could resurrect Voldemort a few more times, he could kill him a few more times and let him taste the pain of being killed repeatedly. "Black, you go find the Horcruxes." After a moment of silence, Alexis made a decision and began to assign tasks. "I will introduce you to some people through special channels and spread the news about finding the Horcrux, but be careful not to let them know the secret of the Horcrux." Sirius Black nodded seriously. He thought Alexis decided to collect Horcruxes and destroy them. It's best to find it. If you can't find it, let it spread on the black market. It's best to spread it to Voldemort's ears. Sirius nodded, then reacted and looked at Alexis in shock. Snape snorted, expressing disdain for Sirius Black's intelligence. As soon as Alexis spoke, he knew what he was going for. "You heard me right. I just want Voldemort to know that we already know his secret." What Alexis said was a bit difficult to pronounce. "Lupin, you must protect Harry and not let him get hurt." Alexis didn't want to explain too much to Sirius Black. Every time he made a plan, He struggled to explain a lot. In the end, he was still faced with a confused expression on his face. He felt that he was wasting time. We can't just passively stare at Voldemort when he comes. We have the final say when he comes. Alexis said this to Lupin. Lupin thought about it carefully and connected it with what Snape said before about luring Voldemort into taking the bait, and he somewhat understood Alexis' purpose. The purpose of asking Sirius Black to collect Horcruxes and leak the news was to alert Voldemort and make Voldemort anxious. When Voldemort knows that a Horcrux has fallen into their hands, he will definitely take action. In this way, the decision of how to act, whether to fight, and how to fight, is all in their hands. Moreover, if they are lucky and collect all the Horcruxes, Voldemort will be completely cornered. I will continue to contact more people, dig deeper for information about Death Eaters, dig out all Voldemort's lackeys, and turn him into a polished commander. Cool. Sirius Black whistled and raised his chin. We have one right in front of us. Snape's face darkened. Snape, you are the only one who has ever been among the Death Eaters. You have to provide me with some information. Alexis didn't want to continue to mediate the conflicts between the two guys. Anyway, Sirius Black was about to leave Hogsmeade Village, and the chances of them meeting each other would also be reduced. It would be of little use if they were not reconciled. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.